Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Sentinel of American Comics. Chapter 1. New York, Queens. In an abandoned factory in a remote location, a group of dark-skinned gangsters wearing hip-hop attire were punching and kicking the poor guy lying on the ground. Want to be a hero? You don't even look at yourself, how dare you go against us? The leader of the gangsters yelled loudly. There were swelling and bruises at the corners of his eyes, and it was obvious that he had been punched. You are really overestimating your capabilities. We're in Boss Frank's gang, and even the police dare not take care of it. How dare you attack us? The gangsters who punched and beat him echoed and laughed wildly. The boss they called Frank Deo was said to be a big drug lord on the West Coast with terrifying power, and these little gangsters were the low-level minions inside. I kindly want you to join in, but Sean, you're so stupid for not showing appreciation. The gang leader spat, and because he refused to sell drugs for these gangsters, he was resented, so he was blocked on the road, dragged here and beaten up. What? Still not convinced? The boy called Sean had bulging eyes, black hair stuck to his forehead, and his face was covered in blood. His hands and feet were held tightly by a few gangsters, and he could not move at all. Looks like I have to make you suffer a little bit to let you know that we are not easy to mess with. The gangster leader laughed strangely, raised his foot and kicked Sean's head hard, trampling him under his feet. As he kicked one foot after another, the stubborn young man's breathing became weaker and weaker, and he gradually stopped moving. His eyes also lost their luster, as if the light of the fire was gradually dimming. Boss, this kid seems to be motionless. Not long after, a black man with a nose ring whispered. The gangster leader was stunned for a moment. The boy's nose was bruised and his face was swollen. His whole face was covered in blood, and his body was motionless, as if he had lost his life. Fake. It's so easy to fight, forget it, let's go. The gangster leader tried his best to hide his inner panic. Although it sounded nice that he was a subordinate of a certain West Coast drug lord, in fact he was just a small gangster. As long as he was not caught by the police, nothing would happen. But if he was killed he's in big trouble, and those cops will send him to jail. A few gangsters left in a hurry, even forgetting to dispose of the body. In the long-abandoned unmanned factory, in the blink of an eye, only a young man named Sean was left lying on the ground. The originally energetic young body gradually began to fade. The ground went cold. The sun sets on the horizon, and night gradually covers the city. In the sky covered with night gauze, a streak of white light suddenly flashed across, like a huge ball of lightning, spinning and emitting a halo, as if controlled by some mysterious force, rushing straight towards the abandoned factory, quickly surrounding it. After turning it a few times, it plunged into the boy's body as if it had found the right target. Well, the cold body lying on the ground suddenly struggled and let out a weak groan. The eyes suddenly opened, with bright white light flashing in the pupils. This is where the boy who was supposed to be dead slowly sat up, his groggy brain gradually clearing up. Some kind of power sorted out the chaotic thoughts, and those complicated and trivial memory fragments gradually became clear. Sean Cypers, his parents died unexpectedly. Captain America, Stark Industries, Peter Parker, this is all a mess. The young man whose face was covered with blood frowned. He seemed to have found something strange in the memory of the previous host of this body, which gave him a vague feeling of bad premonition. You're not going to come to that world where perverts are everywhere and there are as many dicks as dogs, are you? Sean cursed. If he thought about it carefully, it was really possible that he was playing an Avatar mixed martial arts game at home. After beating the last level, the computer screen flashed a white light, and then he was reborn into this world called Sean's unlucky ghost. It's really a headache. Any world would be better than this one. Mutants, superheroes, evil villains, alien life, alien gods. This is simply a hell-level opening difficulty. Sean couldn't help complaining. If it was as he suspected, then as an ordinary person, it would be unreasonable to want to live peacefully in this world. Not to mention those supervillains who want to destroy the world for no reason, just because of bad luck. If he encounters a fight between superheroes, a civil war or something, he may become a poor passerby who is affected. After all, someone like him, ordinary people don't even get a chance to show their faces. At most, they appear in obituary notices as one of the victims in newspapers. This is too unfortunate. While he was feeling annoyed, Sean discovered something interesting. A ball of white light floated in his mind. Through the hazy light, he saw a familiar interface. Countless virtual characters appeared on the list, but some were gray. In the game, this means that there is no choice. Some of them are flashing with colorful light. When the consciousness is extended, various data will appear clearly on the retina. There is always a path, and the ups and downs in life are really surprising. A surprised smile appeared on Sean's face. The virtual interface in his mind was a virtual character mixed martial arts game he played. He collected classic characters from various comics and movies. Through continuous battles, he accumulated victory points and redeemed them. It is a powerful equipment unique to the character. It is strange to say that before he traveled through time, the big boss in the last level happened to be a comic book character in this world. He did not receive the final reward, so he inexplicably traveled over. Dear player, you have a victory reward that has not yet been settled. Do you want to claim it? A clear line of text emerged. Sean was overjoyed and nodded quickly. This is what he needs now. The white light kept flashing, and powerful rewards passed by one after another. Sean's eyes widened, and he was extremely nervous, expecting and fearing at the same time. Mark armor can be upgraded and converted, an outstanding work of Iron Man Tony Stark. The super soldier serum reaches the limit of various qualities of the human body. It will have different effects on different users. The only successful target is Captain America. Vibranium armor, made of indestructible and powerful metal, can absorb huge damage. Sean looked at the various rewards from this world passing by, and his mood was like riding a roller coaster. It seemed that the reason for traveling to this world was that some powerful equipment and weapons from other worlds were in gray status and were temporarily unavailable. Unlocked for use. Why don't you just give me the infinite gems? The reborn time traveler said whimsically. Ding! There was a crisp sound, and the white light finally stopped flashing and settled on a bottle of potion. The liquid contained in it exuded golden light, and the flow emitted an astonishing bright light, which seemed to contain extremely powerful energy. Stellar potion remaining. Sean was stunned. After spinning for so long, he got a golden potion without even an item introduction. He forcibly resisted the urge to curse, and took out the bottle of golden potion from the game bar. A ball of soft light condensed, and a warm feeling filled the palm of his hand. Looking at the reward he finally got, Sean hesitated for a moment, but still he raised his head and drank it in one gulp. Now that he has come to this world that is full of dangers at all times, he cannot let go of any opportunity to strengthen himself, because he is no longer willing to be an ordinary person, one of those powerful heroes with extraordinary abilities who fly into the sky and escape from the earth to save the world. Enjoying the spotlight. Sean doesn't want to be one of the millions of people who look up to them. When danger befalls him and enemies appear in front of him, he can't just expect those superheroes to save him. The moment he drank the golden potion, severe pain overwhelmed his consciousness. His whole body seemed to be shattered in an instant. Blood vessels, nerves, and even every cell were all crushed by the powerful force. His mouth opened wide, the biggest, but couldn't even make a sound. Golden light was like a flame, pouring out of Sean's eyes, and an unimaginable energy slowly flowed and condensed, completely seeping into the body, transforming this fragile and thin human body. The sky has completely darkened, and the human boy in the abandoned factory is undergoing an unprecedented and huge change. Midtown High School, Queens, New York. The early morning sunlight was warm and comfortable. Energetic young students walked into the school gate in groups, greeting each other playfully. A silver-gray car stopped at the door, and handsome young people got out of the car and passed by. The students all cast their eyes with envy or jealousy. Zhongcheng High School is just a public school that relies on financial funding. Most of the students studying here come from ordinary families. Rich boys like this who can drive to school in cars should appear in expensive private high schools, which are the first choice for rich people to raise their children. Harry, a boy wearing glasses, called. The handsome young man turned around and found that his only friend in the school was calling him. Due to his excellent family background, Harry Osborne was not popular at Midtown High School. If it were not for the special care given by his teachers, he may also become the punching bag of school bullies like his friend Peter. Tomorrow the school will organize a trip to the research center of Columbia University, which is really exciting. Peter, who looks like a nerd, is very interested in new and weird things. Oh, it should be a wonderful trip. Harry was distracted, and the young master from a wealthy family followed the red-haired girl in front of him. That was Mary Jane, a beautiful girl who can stimulate young people's hormones. Please give way. A voice sounded behind Peter and Harry. The young man in casual clothes looked at the two people blocking the way, his eyes shining with inexplicable meaning. Quote, "Good morning, Sean." After Peter saw clearly who the other party was, he quickly pulled his good friend away, as if avoiding the plague. "This guy bullied you too?" Harry asked curiously. "No, but it's best to stay away from him." Peter shook his head. "I heard that Sean offended some gangsters. Yesterday someone saw a group of gangsters taking him to an abandoned factory in the suburbs." After Harry heard this, he turned his head and glanced at the guy. He looked delicate and elegant, but he didn't expect that he had contact with street gangsters outside the school. It was really surprising. Sean, who was walking in front, had a smile on his face. He heard the conversation between Peter and Harry. In the past, he was relatively withdrawn and had few friends in school. He was often a loner. Those who the gangsters took a fancy to this and asked Sean to sell marijuana pills for them. The management of public schools was not strict, and young people with rebellious personalities could easily become a regular customer group. Sure enough, we have arrived in that magical world with superheroes and mutants. Sean looked up at the sun above his head. The warm rays penetrated the clouds and shone on the earth. He clenched his fists, and an unprecedented power surged through his body. No one would have thought that that bottle of golden potion of unknown origin would cause earth-shaking changes to this human body. Sean could deeply feel that the sun's rays penetrated into his body bit by bit, just like it was as if he was absorbing the energy from the stars all the time. Although the process was very subtle and slow, the pleasure of slowly getting stronger bit by bit made him extremely intoxicated. Spider-Man, Little Green Goblin. Who else will we meet next? A bright smile appeared on Sean's face. He quickly accepted the fact of time travel and his new identity. The virtual character fighting system in his mind gave the young man confidence and goals. Since he came to such a world full of infinite excitement, and the possible new world, then he should enjoy everything. Whether he meets those superheroes or encounters terrible enemies, they will become a part of his new life. Sitting in the classroom, Sean felt both familiar and unfamiliar. The courses for 10th grade students were not too difficult, at least for him who had strengthened his spiritual consciousness. After casually flipping through the textbook, the knowledge seemed like it is like a graphic with a simple structure and can be easily understood and absorbed. Sean, who was bored, slowly glanced around. There were quite a few familiar faces sitting in the same classroom with him. Harry Osborne, a young master from a wealthy family, was secretly making eye contact with Mary Jane. In the teaser, there was Peter Parker who was immersed in reading a book. The young Spider-Man was just an introverted nerd now, and there was a curly-haired boy leaning against the wall in the corner, who seemed vaguely familiar to Sean. "Who is that guy?" Sean quietly asked the classmate next to him. "His name is Dave Leshevsky." Ignoring the strange looks from his classmates, Sean finally remembered the name. Dave Leshevsky was born in a single-parent family. Like Peter, he was often bullied and blackmailed by his classmates due to his cowardly character. Interestingly, the other party ended up becoming a superhero, just like Peter. In the fighting system, this guy can't even be considered as fighting against the fifth scum. Looking at the wandering curly-haired boy, Sean couldn't help but curl his lips. If having Xiaoqiang's tenacious vitality can be regarded as a superpower, then Dave Leshevsky, who later became Kick-Ass, can indeed do it. Called a superhero. After experiencing the life of a 10th grader in high school for a day, Sean slowly left the classroom. The news that he was being troubled by street gangs seemed to have spread, so everyone seemed to be distant from him. After all, no one wanted to be with the gangsters. If the personnel is involved, he might be expelled from the school. As soon as he walked out of the school gate, Sean saw a group of people standing in the alley at the corner of the street. A red motorcycle made a roaring sound. The gangster leader was sitting on it, looking at him with evil intentions. "Wow, you are very lucky. You pretended to be dead and deceived us yesterday. Let's see where you can escape today." The gangster leader, dressed in a hip-hop outfit, looked at the young man with his hands in his pockets and couldn't help but smile. He thought he had killed someone yesterday and was frightened half to death. He was almost ready to pack up and run away. But today someone told him that Sean was still alive and well, with nothing wrong with him, and he came to school with a swagger. "Boss, this kid doesn't even have any injuries on his face. He must have gone to a big hospital for treatment," said another black man with a nose ring. "What you said is true. It seems that we have to add some new wounds to this kid today." The gangster leader laughed wildly and glanced around with fierce eyes. The students at the school gate hurried away for fear of being implicated and getting into trouble. "Peter, what do you want to do?" Harry pulled his best friend, fearing that the nerd would do something impulsive. "I'm going to find the teacher, otherwise Sean will be beaten to death. These guys are not good people." Although his character is somewhat weak, Peter still has a strong sense of justice and is unwilling to sit back and watch his classmates being beaten and bullied by those gangsters. The teacher can't control these people. Even calling the police will be useless. Harry said helplessly that even if the police came to deal with it, these gangsters would only be locked up for 2 days and would be released soon, and then Sean would suffer even more violent revenge. While Peter and Harry were discussing, Sean had already walked up to the gang leader, put down his backpack on his shoulders, and had a relaxed look on his face, as if he was not afraid at all of being beaten. "I'm just looking for you," the black-haired young man said with a smile. "Boss, did you hear what this kid said?" The black man with a nose ring laughed. "Are you looking for us? Do you think you were beaten hard enough yesterday, so you want to experience it again?" "Ha ha ha." The gangster leader laughed wildly, thinking that this kid was beaten stupid by him. Sean stood there with calm eyes, letting the gangsters laugh. He waited until the other party's laughter stopped, then slowly said, "Now you have 2 choices, one is to get beaten up by me, and then get away, the other is it's up to you to beat yourselves and get out of here. Which one do you want to choose? It seems you were really beaten stupid." There was a dead silence at the school gate. Sean's words were clear and powerful. Not only the gangsters heard them, but also the high school students who were watching. The gang leader tore off an iron chain from the red motorcycle and slowly wrapped it around his hand. Thinking of being fooled by this kid yesterday, he was so frightened that he almost ran away. This time he had to show the other side a little show. How dare a high school student speak to himself like this? Although he is just a gangster, and what he does every day is to run errands for others and do some dirty work of selling marijuana and drugs, but a gangster also has dignity. Normally, any high school student would turn pale with fear when he sees him. Obediently took out all the money on his body, but this guy Sean not only refused the request to become his subordinate but also dared to speak in such a tone. "It's useless no matter how much you pretend to be dead today," the gangster leader said viciously, and punched Sean with his chained fist. The other gangsters also surrounded him, preparing to give the brazen high school student a lesson. Sean still remained calm. If it had been before, he would have been so frightened that he held his head and begged for mercy, but the power rushing through his body gave him strong confidence. The bottle of golden potion brought not only the hugeness of the human body. The change also made his mentality completely different. The fist that hit the face was extremely slow in Sean's sight, and the golden light flashed in his eyes. He grabbed the gang leader's arm, then quickly pressed it close, turned around, and threw a beautiful shoulder, throw the other person to the ground. There was a bang, dust flew up, and everyone was shocked. They only saw the gangster leader hitting Sean, and then he was thrown to the ground. No one saw the process clearly. "Beat him." Before the gangster leader could finish speaking, Sean stepped on his face. A fishy smell came out of his mouth, and the thick liquid mixed with a few hard teeth was spat out. "This is the gift you gave me yesterday, and I give it back to you now." Sean smiled and stepped on the other person's face again. The face of the gangster leader looked like a dying workshop, and it was instantly covered with blood. The other gangsters rushed up screaming, and the first one was the black man with the nose ring. Without even looking, Sean punched the man on the bridge of the nose, and then kicked him away. He didn't care about the remaining ones. He showed no mercy and punched them all until their noses were bruised and their faces were swollen. He didn't stop until the gangsters were all wailing and begging for mercy. "When I see you again at Zhongcheng High School, I'll beat you every time I see you." Sean put his hands in his pockets, finished his lines very comfortably, turned around and left. I have to say, this feeling of pretending to be awesome and running away is still very satisfying. As for what kind of trouble these gangsters would get into by teaching them a lesson, Sean didn't care at all. He had noticed before taking action that there were no surveillance cameras nearby, and those gangsters would not call the police. The only thing he was worried about was whether the school would be punished for fighting. He fired. However, based on Sean's past performance in school, this possibility is not too high. Although he used to be withdrawn, his academic performance was pretty good. No matter which world he is in, good students are always favored by teachers. The afterglow of the setting sun shines on New York. Sean is walking on the street with a shoulder bag on his back. He is alone in this world. His parents died in an accident, leaving only a fairly generous compensation. He was adopted in at his uncle's house. His only relative also passed away a few years ago. The unfortunate experience led to Sean's previously withdrawn and indifferent character, unwilling to communicate too much with others. What a poor guy. Sean muttered something. He walked on the streets in the evening and looked around. There were many high-rise buildings in the city, cars were coming and going, and the afterglow of the setting sun was dotted with the bustling steel forest. Everything was so real. No matter what the reason is for me to travel across time, a new life is waiting for me. The memories of his past life were buried deep in his mind. Sean took a long breath and his eyes became bright. Now that he has come to this world, he must keep moving forward until the end. Returning to the apartment left by his uncle, Sean lay on the sofa. He had lived alone for a long time. He was born in Queens, which is the largest and second most populous of the 5 boroughs in New York. It is very racially diverse. In addition to white people, blacks, Asians and South Americans account for a certain proportion. Compared with the wealthy areas where rich people live, the security in this area is not very good, and there are often some unemployed people. Fortunately, I live in a community, otherwise I would have to be wary of thieves and robbers every day. Sean sighed. He was going to adapt to high school life for a period of time. At least he would be familiar with the world. Once he traveled through time, he would be able to dominate the world and dominate the world. That was the kind of treatment only the protagonist template would have, let alone in this technology. In a world where geniuses and superpowers are everywhere, even if long Aeotian comes, he still has to be taught how to behave. Being low-key and doing things high-key is the right thing to do. Taking out a bottle of soda from the refrigerator, Sean set a 8-character policy for himself. In the future, he would do less things that would attract the limelight. If he was unlucky enough to be trampled to death by some cosmic god, it would be a tragedy. Turning on the TV, there was a live broadcast of a parliamentary debate on the issue of mutants. Sean, who was drinking soda, immediately became interested. That race with all kinds of extraordinary abilities is a powerful force in the world. If it weren't for one of them, if the two leaders have differences with each other, it will be impossible for human society to maintain its current peaceful state. Gentlemen and ladies, we are witnessing another stage of human evolution. This mutation mostly occurs in adolescence and is induced by emotional ups and downs. Standing on the stage is a red-haired girl, wearing a pair of glasses, like a beautiful scholar, exuding an elegant and intellectual atmosphere. Thank you, Miss Gray. Your speech was quite educational, but it deviated from the theme of this meeting, which is, are mutants dangerous? The camera focused on a middle-aged man in the audience, who seemed to be a member of Congress. That's an inappropriate question, Congressman. Some people get into accidents while driving, and some don't. So I have to take the driver's license test. But there's no license to survive. The red-haired woman refused to back down and retorted, in fact, if mutants appear in public, it will cause panic, hostility, and even violence. To prevent mutants from suffering such hostility, I beg Congress to cancel the mutant registration, forcing them to disclose their identities. Why do mutants hide? The congressman interrupted the conversation again. They're not hiding. I know where they are hiding. The congressman stood up and said triumphantly, I have a list of mutants in the United States. There is a girl who can walk through walls and easily sneak into a bank vault or the White House. Or in your home. I have also heard that there is a person who can sense and control human thoughts and deprive us of our free will. What a terrifying ability this is. We have the right to decide whether our children have mutants as teachers or classmates, or stay away from them. Gentlemen and ladies, in fact, mutants do exist, and they are among us. We have to know who they are, study them thoroughly, and figure out their abilities. There was a burst of warm applause on the TV. Obviously, this congressman has been recognized and supported by the majority of people. In recent years, the problem of mutants has become more and more serious. The reason why there is the above debate is because not long ago, Congress launched the proposal to pass the mutant registration bill caused an uproar in public opinion. It won't be long before they discover that mutants are nothing at all. Sean turned off the TV and lay on the sofa staring at the ceiling. He was looking forward to the arrival of that superhero era. New York, Columbia University. There are more than 32,000 kinds of spiders in the world, and the order Araneae is divided into 3 suborders. Under the leadership of an Asian female teacher, 10th grade students from Midtown High School walked into the Research Center of Columbia University. As a public middle school, it was not easy to get this visiting spot. Awesome. This is the most advanced electron microscope on the East Coast. It's unbelievable. Compared to his best friend Peter, who was very interested, Harry seemed indifferent. The young master of the Osborne family had average learning ability. Compared with boring scientific instruments, he was more interested in the red-haired girl walking in front of him. Quote, So these spiders have different abilities, which they use to hunt food. For example, this spider from Australia has a strong jumping ability. This one is from the genus Archutia and the family Phyltidae. Web-spinning spiders can weave funnel-shaped spider webs that are almost as strong as construction steel cables. This type uses reflex actions to hunt, and its reflex nerves respond very quickly. Many researchers believe that they have precognition, the ability to predict danger in advance. The Asian female teacher explained in great detail that these were super spiders created by Columbia University over the past 5 years through DNA cultivation and transformation, and then using synthetic ribonucleic acid to create a new genome, which has various wonderful abilities. The ultimate idea is to optimize the DNA of these spiders so that humans can also acquire these extraordinary abilities. Peter listened very carefully. He looked at the various spiders in the petri dish and was amazed by their magical abilities, such as their powerful jumping, tough webs, unimaginable neural reflexes, and mysteries similar to the sixth sense ability. These all made him feel extremely novel. Can I take a picture for the school magazine? Peter made a request to the female teacher. He is a photographer for the school magazine and is often responsible for taking some photos at school events. After receiving the approval, Peter raised the camera and pressed the shutter button. Someone pushed him from behind, causing the focused photo to become blurry. Stay away from him. Harry stood up. He knew that his best friend was often bullied at school. What else are you going to do? The boy who pushed Peter said with a strange smile. Then Master Osborne will ask his father to fire your father. A big man said teasingly. He was the one who bullied Peter the most. What can your rich father do to me? Sue me. Me. The big guy grabbed Harry's clothes and spoke fiercely. He had long been unhappy with this rich boy. Due to his handsome appearance and the family's wealth, there were many girls in Midtown High School who secretly liked this guy, especially since he often approached Mary Jane. If he hadn't been afraid of being expelled, he would have let this young master from a wealthy family know how hard his fists are. Thompson, let him go. A young man said, with a flat tone that showed no refusal. Sean. After the big man named Thompson saw the target clearly, he hesitated for a moment before letting go of his hand, turned around and left dejectedly. As the star of the school's football team, Thompson usually relies on his extraordinary height and muscles at Midtown High School, and no one dares to mess with him. However, the situation has been different recently. The unknown guy Sean Cypers doesn't know. When did he have such good skills that even those street gangsters were no match for him? What happened at the school gate yesterday had already spread throughout the campus. Sean instantly became a popular figure in Midtown High School. If anyone else dared to order him like this, Thompson would just punch him. But facing a school legend who defeated several street gangsters on his own, he did not have the courage. Thank you, Sean. Peter thanked him gratefully, and Harry beside him nodded reluctantly. We are all classmates, no need to be so polite. Sean waved his hand, and he also helped. After all, seeing the young Spider-Man being bullied by a school bully, he couldn't just sit back and watch. Who would have thought that on this day, a nerd from Midtown High School, a high school student known as Tiny Peter Parker, would begin his life of becoming a superhero. Peter, what would it be like if humans had the abilities of these spiders? Sean asked Peter, who was taking pictures. It should be very powerful. He will have super strong reflexes that can dodge incoming bullets, and strong jumping ability, allowing him to cross a building, and even fly over walls like a spider. Peter imagined that this high school student who loved reading had a mind full of fantastic ideas about science. Harry curled his lips and walked quietly towards Mary Jane. Chasing beautiful girls was Master Osborne's life goal. Maybe you will become such a powerful guy in the future. Sean patted Peter on the shoulder and walked away with a smile. He already has his own power and has no interest in being bitten by a spider again. The human body continues to absorb the light from stars, providing endless life energy. At the school gate, if Sean let go of his power, there might be a bloody massacre. He felt that he could easily penetrate the gangster leader's body. Human flesh and blood became nothing more than paper in his eyes. Just as fragile. His consciousness penetrated into the white light in his mind, and a progress bar appeared on the system interface. He was growing at an extremely slow rate every day, but so far, it has not broken through the 5% limit. According to the above display, it seems that every day if you reach 25%, you can unlock one of your abilities. When Peter heard Sean's words, he felt a little baffled. How could humans have the same abilities as spiders? He raised the camera in his hand, and the lens kept changing, and finally moved to Mary Jane's body, and then froze. As one of the most beautiful girls in Midtown High School, the lively and cheerful Mary Jane has always been the target of boys, such as the big man Thompson of the football team, her good friend Harry, and herself, all trying to get close to this girl with a long head. The red-haired girl tried every means to please the other person. However, compared to other people's initiative, Peter was far behind. Being introverted, he didn't dare to say a word to the girl he had a crush on, so he could only choose to watch silently. Peter, who was lost in his thoughts, didn't notice at all that a little spider was sliding down the spider's thread, quietly crawling along the camera and onto his palm. The little guy seemed to be attracted and pierced the human body with its mouthparts, skin and take a bite gently. Peter retracted his hand reflexively. The culprit spider had disappeared, leaving only a small swelling on his palm, which looked like a mosquito bite. It's really strange. Where do mosquitoes come from? Peter looked confused. The future Spider-Man started his own life trajectory, but on the other side, Sean ran into trouble again. After leaving Columbia University, he was blocked by a group of people on his way back to school. This time they were no longer street gangsters dressed in hip-hop attire, but a group of burly men in black suits with tattoos all over their arms. There was a faint bulge on their waists, probably a pistol or something like that. A middle-aged man came out with a domineering look. Listen, boy, you injured my man. Although that guy is just an unknown person, he has done a good job recently and helped me sell. That's a lot of weed, and he's in the hospital right now, and it's going to cost me a lot of money. So, I also give you two choices, either let me break one of your legs, or you can work for me from now on. The middle-aged man looked at Sean arrogantly and found that the other person's face was calm, as if he didn't hear what he said at all. Boy, I know you are good at fighting, but I am not one of those low-level street gangsters. If you don't cooperate, New York is such a big place, and it is normal for a few people to disappear occasionally. The middle-aged man said coldly, as if he had casually opened his suit, revealing the metal weapon fastened to his waist, which was a pistol. Then what am I going to do? Sean asked aloud. I mean, if I work for you. At 10 o'clock tonight, go to the abandoned factory in the suburbs and I will give you the goods. Remember, newcomers must hand over 80% of the money they earn. This is the rule. The middle-aged man patted Sean on the shoulder with a satisfied expression on his face. Don't even think about going to the police. My boss, Mr. Frank Deo, is a big shot on the West Coast. The police chief will give me some respect. Watching the group of people walk away, Sean put his hands in his pockets, and his seemingly gentle face hardened little by little, becoming as cold as ice. The night is dark and the stars and moon are dim. A group of people walked into an abandoned factory on the outskirts of Queens. It was once an industrial site for chemical production. It closed down during the economic crisis at the beginning of the last century. Due to its remote location, it is usually sparsely populated, is often used by gangs as a good place to deal with troubles, and occasionally performs some shady and illegal work. Boss, do you think that kid will be too scared to come? The middle-aged man stood on the roof of the factory building, and a subordinate next to him asked softly. After all, they were also the backbone of the gang. If they didn't go to nightclubs at night or discuss business with the boss, they would inevitably come to this ghost place to wait for a high school student. There is a lot of anger. No, that kid is a smart man. He knows where he can't escape. A high school student with no family or friends is just the right person to be absorbed into a gang. As the boss, the middle-aged man is very patient. His boss, Frank Deo, is a major drug lord on the West Coast. On the surface, he runs a large-scale trading company, but in fact he is engaged in the illegal trade of smuggled drugs. Recently, the gang has been involved in the Irish gangs in Hell's Kitchen, and the Japanese occupied the territory. Many people died on all three sides. It was a time when manpower was urgently needed. Just at this time, Sean came into his sight. A high school student could beat several street gangsters to the hospital. This made the middle-aged man a little interested, so he prepared to absorb the other person into the gang. A boss, we need some capable subordinates. As for Sean's own wishes, that was no longer within his scope of consideration. If the other party didn't appreciate it, he wouldn't mind letting the high school student experience the darkness and cruelty of the world in advance. What time is it? The middle-aged man asked with a frown. It's almost the appointed time, boss. You must teach that kid a lesson later. Who is he? How dare he ask us to wait here? A burly man clenched his palms, and the others also echoed, all looking forward to greeting the newcomer with their fists. You have to be measured in your actions. That little guy still has to earn a lot of money for me. The middle-aged man smiled faintly. In his opinion, the minions who peddled and sold drugs for him were his money-making machines. In addition to large-scale drug transactions, some bulk goods will flow into the hands of a leader like him, and then distributed to his subordinates to distribute the goods. Between 30 and 50% of the profits must be handed over to him. Those gangsters risked being arrested by the police and jailed to peddle, and most of the money actually fell into the pockets of the gang's upper echelons. Boss, that boy is here. A sentry man shouted. In the dim moonlight, the middle-aged man saw a dark shadow appear. Sean, wearing casual clothes, walked into the abandoned factory unhurriedly. He didn't seem to be in a hurry at all, just like it's like going out for a walk in the night. It seems like I need to give this guy some color. Sean's laid-back attitude made the middle-aged man very dissatisfied, and he was determined to make this unscrupulous high school student suffer a little later. You were really good at stepping on it. The middle-aged man sneered. There was a guy who didn't come at the appointed time and made me wait for 2 more minutes. Do you know what happened next? I cut it off with a knife. Take off 2 of his fingers. Only in this way can he remember the lesson and not make the same mistake next time. Sean was smiling. Maybe the middle-aged man's bloody story was very effective for other high school students and could scare them until they turned pale. But it had no effect on him because the power of both parties was not on the same level. Therefore, the other party's pretentious and cold behavior will only make Sean feel funny, just like a child pretending to be in front of adults, which looks particularly funny. Those who are late will have their fingers cut off, so what are you going to do for a punctual person like me? Sean asked curiously. Bloom, go welcome the newcomer and let him know what the rules are. The middle-aged man grinned and waved the burly man next to him over. The burly man with a strong physique cracked his knuckles, and his face was full of evil, like a black bear walking upright, which made people involuntarily feel fear. I will be very gentle, little one. Bloom said roughly, if you don't resist, I will only break a few of your bones. The other people standing on the roof of the factory building were like watching the fun, cheering loudly for Bloom. They couldn't wait to see the high school student be beaten until he knelt down and begged for mercy. The burly man strode up to Sean. When he saw that the other person was silent, he thought he was too scared to speak. He raised his huge palm, ready to knock this guy down with one blow. Click. There was a clear sound of bone cracking in the abandoned factory. Everyone standing on the roof widened their eyes. Even the middle-aged man who had remained calm as if he was watching a play was stunned. Bloom's hand was bent at a 45-degree angle, as if the joints of his arm had been completely broken. The white bones pierced the skin, which looked extremely bloody and had a strong visual impact. The burly man who had been so arrogant just now let out a deafening wail, half kneeling on the ground, and a large amount of blood spurted out from his arms, instantly staining the dusty ground red. "I've never been very gentle with men," the young high school student said with a smile. Who would have thought that such a gentle and elegant boy could break the thick arm of a 6-foot-tall man like breaking a chopstick? "Kill him." Seeing that he had lost one of his men, the middle-aged man directly ordered others to shoot Sean. He had given up on conquering him. This seemingly harmless high school student was no different from a demon. His eyes breaking Bloom's arm without blinking. Especially when the other party acted as if nothing had happened, with a faint smile on his face. This cold attitude made people feel chilled in their hearts. The middle-aged man pulled out the pistol from his waist. No matter how capable Sean was at shooting, he was still a human being. His flesh and blood body was shot into a hornet's nest, and there was still only one way to die. In the silent night sky, a burst of fierce gunshots echoed. In the abandoned factory, the little flashes of fire from the muzzles intertwined into a dense network, like a series of tongues of fire, covering the high-speed moving Sean. "Go." The young high school student is as agile as a nimble cheetah, fast and changeable. He constantly uses various obstacles to avoid continuous shooting, and dodges through the powerful firepower. In the depths of Sean's eyes, a subtle golden light flickered, and the extremely fast metal bullets gradually slowed down in his field of vision, enough to see clearly that countless bullets tore through the air, forming a dense web of death. The middle-aged man fired continuously. The high school student was like a ghost, turning into a black shadow to dodge and jump. At some point, he rushed to the roof of the factory building, like a tiger rushing into a herd of sheep. Each gunman was killed, the throat was crushed, and the other party was reaping life like a god of death. The noisy factory slowly became quiet. As the last gunman fell, Sean, whose hands were stained with blood, stood in front of him. "Do not come." The middle-aged man's voice trembled, and he raised his pistol at Sean, but unfortunately the magazine was empty. No matter how he pulled the trigger, he could not fire a single bullet to kill the terrible demon in front of him. "How do you say that?" "Oh, I hate it when people put a gun to my head." Sean took the gun from the middle-aged man's hand, squeezed it hard and crushed it into scrap metal. Inhuman power surged in the young man's body. "I am Boss Frank D'Amico's man, you will get into big trouble if you kill me." The middle-aged man lost his previous composure, his legs became weak and he knelt on the ground begging for mercy. "Frank D'Amico, I will go find him soon." Sean's tone was calm. "The best way to solve the problem is to eradicate all enemies and those who may become enemies in the future at once." The next morning, the piercing siren broke the tranquility of the suburbs. A police car was parked outside a long-abandoned chemical plant, with yellow cordons drawn around it. "There was a fierce gun battle here last night. Residents who lived far away heard it, so they immediately called the police bureau's phone number." Two uniformed police officers got out of the car and walked into the abandoned factory that was filled with a rotten, musty smell. They saw a shocking and bloody scene. A strong and burly man fell to the ground, with one arm broken and twisted. The ground was dyed red with blood, and the big man's eyes were bulging, as if he was suffering tremendous pain before his death. There were many bullet holes all around, and it looked like a fierce gun battle had indeed taken place. Walking up the stairs, more people fell to the ground, holding firearms in their hands. Most of them had their throats crushed or their necks broken. According to the rich experience of the two police officers, the other party's tactics, it was clean and powerful, otherwise it would be impossible to break an adult's neck in an instant. Finally, their eyes rested on the middle-aged man in a suit. His dim eyes were full of shock and fear, as if you can't believe anything until you die. "I'm busy again," a young policeman said excitedly. "What a newcomer like him looks forward to most is to encounter such a big case." "Stop the daydreams in your mind. This matter is probably difficult to handle. There are too few clues." The older policeman poured cold water on him. Judging from the remaining traces at the crime scene, the murderer seemed to be a professionally trained killer or mercenary. In the face of so many gunmen, he still solved the battle very cleanly. It's scary just thinking about it. This guy seems to be Frank D'Amico's subordinate, maybe a gang vendetta. The young policeman recognized the dead middle-aged man. No matter what it is, it's not our turn to take care of it. We can just write the report when the time comes. The older policeman shook his head. He knew that there was a special agency responsible for handling such matters. The confidential files of the police station would be handed over to those black agents. Even the police chief, who had always had a bad temper, treated those indifferent and rigid people. The agents in black all have smiles on their faces. You can imagine how terrible the power the secret agency behind them wields. Sealing the scene, we may be able to find some useful clues. Anyway, just leave this matter to those guys. The older police officer patted his colleague on the shoulder. The truth of many things cannot be explored because the facts hidden behind them are often unbearable. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the bright sunshine shines through the window into the lively and noisy classroom. Sean, who was leaning on his seat out of boredom, saw Peter Parker, who was a little different from usual. This nerdy guy had become very energetic today, as if his whole body was filled with inexhaustible power. Even his voice was much louder when he spoke, and his whole person exuded a sense of confidence. This earth-shaking change surprised even his best friend Harry Osborne. He didn't understand what Peter had experienced and how he could have such a huge change. Sean, who was sitting in his seat, raised the corners of his mouth slightly. He was perhaps the only person who knew the reason. In his perception, Peter, who used to be extremely weak, had undergone tremendous changes. When he walked, his muscles were full of strength, and his whole body was full of strength. People's reaction ability has also become extremely fast, as if it has been strengthened several times. This is the genetic mutation brought by the super spider, which gives Peter strong physical fitness and some incredible special abilities. But compared to who he is now, Peter is still a little bit behind. Sean compared himself with Peter and thought that if they really fought, he should be able to beat the young and immature Spider-Man to the ground. Bathing in the midday sun, Sean was filled with joy. He had been doing physical exercises recently, which would absorb energy much faster. Especially after going through the devilish extreme exercise, he found that his physical fitness was still growing. This makes Sean very happy. There is room for improvement, which means that he can continue to strengthen. Living in a complex world with cosmic-level gods, Sean is far from satisfied with his current power. He hopes to become more powerful until he can gain a foothold and have a place in this world. After spending another boring afternoon, Sean quickly packed his things and prepared to go home for his daily training plan. By the way, he planned a cordial visit to Mr. Frank Deo, the drug lord who roamed the West Coast. Who would have thought that there would be a high school student carefully planning how to get rid of himself and his gang? Wow, I can't believe it. Peter just beat up Thompson on the football team. You mean that nerdy Peter Parker? Of course, it's that insignificant Parker. He just pissed off Thompson in the restaurant, and then in the corridor, Thompson was about to make trouble for Peter, but he got a severe beating instead. Is that guy taking stimulants? Thompson is the star of the football team and is as strong as a cow. Sean couldn't help but snicker as he listened to the campus gossip whispered by the students. Today's Peter Parker is no longer the nerd who allowed others to bully him. Probably soon, there will be a masked weirdo in a red and blue uniform in New York, dragging a long spider silk from the sky, and knocking a group of criminals to the ground. When school was over, Sean saw Peter walking out of school with high spirits. Different from the humble and timid past, this high school student now looked like a victorious general, holding his head high. This was probably the change brought about by strong power. Walking on the street home, Sean suddenly felt unusual attention, as if someone was following him and peering at him. He was slightly startled, suppressed the thought of turning his head, and walked to the door of a store pretending to be casual, bought a bottle of soda, looked in the reflector of a car parked on the street, and saw a man in black wearing sunglasses, pretending to buy a newspaper from the newsstand, but in fact his eyes were always on himself. Frank Deo's men are here. Sean had doubts in his heart. How could a big drug lord do this trick of tracking and surveillance? And as he walked along, he found that there was more than one person following him. The person seemed to have received professional training. If Sean hadn't had keen perception, coupled with some knowledge of anti-stalking, I really can't detect these people. If you're not a gangster, how could you be? Sean's face was gloomy. He remembered a special agency in this world that specializes in investigating various supernatural events and dealing with unconventional crises. By the way, it also assembled a group of powerful superheroes to form a team. You probably won't find me so soon. Sean thought in his heart that he didn't want to come into contact with that special agency so early, especially when he saw a one-eyed black man. According to the usual routine in movies, people who work for the government never get a good ending. He could deal with mutants, or chat with the playboy about his appreciation and taste in women, but he might as well avoid being entangled by Nick Fury and joining S.H.I.E.L.D. Logically speaking, it's impossible for S.H.I.E.L.D. to notice me. There must be something wrong with this. Sean frowned. It seemed he had to figure out what was going on, otherwise he would remain in a passive position. I said, "Why are we monitoring a high school student?" The young man stood next to the newsstand, picked up a newspaper and read it. In fact, his eyes were always staring at the target in the distance without any relaxation. "This is just routine," a colleague's voice came from the headset. Across the road, a middle-aged man was leaning on a car, occasionally raising his hand to look at the time, as if waiting for someone. According to the information we have obtained, this high school student named Sean Cypers was threatened by gangsters a week ago. Those gangsters are now lying in the hospital. Later, a gang leader came to him again. Yesterday, 14 bodies were lying in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of Queens, including the ringleader. What does this mean? A high school student killed 14 gang members with guns. The young man curled his lips, feeling somewhat disapproving. Of course not, but this is too coincidental, so we need to investigate Sean Cypers' suspicion. The middle-aged man whispered that he also did not think that a high school student who had lost his parents since childhood could kill 14 gangsters by himself. However, according to the procedures of the headquarters, they had to conduct an investigation on all suspect targets, or follow and monitor several times until the other party is removed from the list. Maybe this is an ordinary gang conflict, the young man said casually. The boss of that boss is Frank Deo from the West Coast. This guy has recently been fighting with the Japanese gang, and the Irish gang is fighting for Hell's Kitchen. Who knows if these two forces took action on our territory? Well, that makes sense. Remember to write this in the report. The middle-aged man agreed and said that New York, a prosperous city, also has a lot of invisible darkness and filth under its glamorous appearance. Those gangs are always fighting to the death for territory and illegal business. Speaking of Hell's Kitchen, there are some things that need attention. There are several guys on the list. Daredevil, known as the Red Devil of Hell's Kitchen, a weirdo who has emerged recently, fights criminals at night, has extraordinary fighting skills, and extraordinary perception, and there is also a Punisher. This guy is ruthless and shows no mercy to criminals. Judging from his behavior, he is a strictly trained soldier or mercenary. The young man read a few people on the list. These are targets that need to be closely monitored. The reason why they only maintain a certain degree of attention is because they are not considered dangerous people and do not have the ability to threaten the federal government or homeland security, so just have a rough idea of their whereabouts and scope of activities. These people are not easy to mess with. It seems that there are more and more weird guys like them. The middle-aged man shook his head. When did these people start to appear in New York? In the past, they faced transnational underground organizations and terrorist groups. Now they also have to deal with a group of weird guys who like to wear tights and uniforms. Okay, today's monitoring mission ends here. No, 76, Sean Cypers, everything is normal. The young man put down the newspaper in his hand and glanced at the high school student in the distance. The other person had been sitting in the comic shop, seemingly fascinated by the wonderful plots in the comic books, and had forgotten the time to go home. How on earth did you connect a high school student who loves reading comics with a cold-blooded killer? The young man cursed. The sunset gradually sets, and the warm orange afterglow envelopes the city. The roads are busy with traffic, and pedestrians on the roadside rush to their homes. After a day of fast-paced life, people are eager to get some relaxation and tranquility from home. After the two people left, Sean slowly put down the comic book in his hand, with a light of relief in his eyes. It's such a meticulous and careful Secret Service that they won't let go of even a small coincidence like this. The conversation between the two agents was intercepted by Sean, who was listening attentively. How could they have imagined that this high school student under surveillance actually had powerful abilities that ordinary people could not imagine, and all the physical values were strengthened? This also includes one's own perception ability. Daredevil, Punisher. It turns out that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been monitoring these street heroes. From the conversation between the two agents, Sean learned some valuable information. In the early years, Hell's Kitchen was a famous slum on Manhattan Island. It was mainly inhabited by the working class of Irish immigrants. It was famous for its messy and backward living quality, serious ethnic conflicts and high crime rate. It later became a paradise for criminals and gave birth to it has attracted many criminals and gang bosses. In recent years, due to its geographical location close to the business district of Midtown Manhattan, it has experienced rapid development with the continued investment of real estate developers. It seems that there is also a famous real estate tycoon there, Wilson Fisk. Sean sorted out more information from his past memories, which was very helpful for him to figure out the situation in this world. He was just a small person now, and he didn't want to face behemoths like S.H.I.E.L.D., and those who were flying and escaping. Superheroes with extraordinary abilities have not yet fully appeared. If he wants to obtain more benefits as soon as possible, then he has to slowly start planning. Who should we start with? Sean thought carefully and decided to deal with Frank Deo first. This could just be used to divert S.H.I.E.L.D.'s attention and save those guys from always wasting their time on him. After making a plan in his mind, Sean returned home, put on an elastic vest, and sweated profusely in the empty room that had been renovated. Various fitness equipment was placed in the room. This young and immature high school student's body had already showing strong muscle lines, a strong and powerful young body. He is constantly undergoing high-intensity physical exercise. Every time he squeezes out a little bit of strength from his body, he can feel that he has strengthened a little bit. Although the amplitude is very small, but as long as there is progress, it is worth celebrating. Hoo ho ho. Sean's chest was like a blower, making a dull breathing sound. He continued to strengthen his body through high-intensity extreme training. The feeling of becoming stronger bit by bit was simply fascinating. He had a vague hunch that as long as he persisted in this kind of training, he would be able to obtain more generous rewards after breaking a certain shackle. It's time to be a superhero fighting gangster crime. A smile appeared on Sean's lips. Originally, he planned to pay a visit to Mr. Frank Deo after a while, but the appearance of S.H.I.E.L.D. made him change his plan. If there was another new person worthy of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s attention, characters, those agents will naturally not continue to focus on themselves, so that they can divert the other party's attention, and secondly, they can solve their own economic crisis. Due to the purchase of a large amount of fitness equipment and high-calorie foods to replenish energy, Sean almost spent the generous compensation. Therefore, it was the best of both worlds to solve the West Coast drug lords and rob the rich and help the poor. If you traveled through time and became Iron Man, you probably wouldn't have these worries. Sean laughed at himself. The initial process of primitive accumulation is always long and arduous, but as long as you take a solid first step, the road ahead will naturally be much easier, with countless wealth and awesomeness. Status, he will have these sooner or later. Frank, I swear I'm not lying. That idiot came out of nowhere, knocked down all my men at once, and then took away the payment for the transaction. In a building materials warehouse on the West Coast, a man in a red shirt tried his best to explain. He was surrounded by a group of people, and one of his fingers was clamped by metal pliers. If the other person was not satisfied at all, the next scene might be very serious. It's bloody. You said he was the only one. He killed more than 20 of your gun-toting gangsters in a few minutes. Tell me, is he Captain America from the comics? Frank Deo, a drug lord in a suit and tie, sneered, compared with this explanation. Tear, I believe more that you pocketed the money and then called the police and asked them to seize the batch of drugs. Frank, you must believe me. That guy also said that he will come to visit you in person soon. The man in the red shirt named Turl screamed, with great fear in his voice. Having followed Frank for many years, he knew very well how cruel the West Coast drug lord was in dealing with traitors. Okay, my son is still waiting for me to go to the movie, and I don't want to disappoint him. Frank shook his head, turned around and left. I'll leave it to you, Joe. Ignoring the miserable howling from behind, Frank slowly walked into the car. To be honest, his recent business was not going well. A week ago, more than a dozen of his men were killed in an abandoned factory in New York, which cost him a lot of money. Chian settled the matter. In recent days, it seemed more like someone was deliberately going against him. He had been robbed of several transaction payments on his territory in New York, and the police had also been notified to seize a large amount of drugs. This made the West Coast the drug lords suffered heavy losses. Have I messed with anyone lately? Frank was puzzled. He started out in the smuggling business. On the surface, he was the boss of a foreign trade company. In fact, he was engaged in a hugely profitable business of smuggling contraband and selling drugs. As his business grew bigger and bigger, Frank gradually he became the #1 drug lord on the West Coast, and even the police couldn't do anything to him. While the gangsters and drug lords were worrying about their business, in a community in Queens, New York, a young man who played a role as a superhero was lying on the bed happily counting money, and he threw all the Franklin bills all over the floor. Sure enough, fighting criminals is the fastest way to make money. Sean sat up from the bed all of a sudden. There were several suitcases piled in the room, filled with neat stacks of US dollars. These were gifts from the generous boss Frank. Soon these funds would become expensive. Training equipment. Sean put the suitcase under the bed and put on an elastic vest. The originally thin boy had become stronger. He sweated profusely every day and performed devilish extreme training. It was like he was accumulating strength bit by bit, which would one day make him stronger. Break through the shackles of the human body. Soon, Sean will visit the big drug lord on the West Coast in person. To solve the problem, he has to find out the root cause. He killed Frank D'Amico's men. If his identity is investigated by the other party, there will be a steady stream of money. Trouble will ensue. So instead of letting the other party come to your door, it is better to completely eradicate all hidden dangers. Anyway, the gangster and drug lord is not a good person. Since coming into this world for more than a month, Sean has lived a very fulfilling life. He goes to school at normal times every day and rushes between different classrooms. On the surface, he is no different from a normal student. After returning home from school, he still has to carry out extraordinary activities. Human physical training. Fortunately, this body did not leave too many social relationships. Otherwise, it would be difficult for Sean to start a new life. Jingle bell. The ringing of the phone interrupted Sean's training process. He picked up the phone to answer it, and a familiar voice came from the other end. Hi Sean, I'm Harry. It's Carnival in New York in 2 weeks and I've booked a private room at a nearby hotel with a great observation deck. Are you coming over? Peter and Mary, Jane will come to participate. Hearing Master Osborne's joyful tone with a hint of pride, Sean couldn't help but smile. Since he helped him once at the research center of Columbia University last time, he was honored to be Harry Osborne's assistant. His second friend in Midtown High School, Master Osborne, was much happier than the boring life he had during this period. On the days when he was about to graduate, this rich man finally made a move on his favorite girl, Mary Jane. With a fierce offensive, he successfully captured the heart of the red-haired girl. This result made Peter Parker, who became Spider-Man, feel sad. His best friend and the girl he had a crush on were both invulnerable, so the miserable Peter could only suppress his feelings and silently grieve for this. 2 people sent their blessings. Okay, I will go when I have time. Well, thank you for the invitation. Sean replied neatly, and after chatting for a few words, he hung up the phone. He didn't have much interaction with Harry Osborne. They were limited to occasional meetings and conversations at school. Apart from his mediocre ability, this young master of the Osborne family was actually a good friend and his family background was superior. But he has never been contaminated by the bad habits of a playboy, and he is not hypocritical towards his friends. He has the same innocence and enthusiasm as most young people. If his friend hadn't been Spider-Man and his father had turned into the Green Goblin, he wouldn't have. There will be a tragic ending later. Maybe I can change that. Sean thought for a moment, could Osborne Enterprises be his first springboard? After all, just relying on some money from robbing Frank D'Amico can't satisfy Sean's appetite. In the final analysis, the other party is just a gangster and drug lord on the West Coast. He can only hide in dark corners and earn shady profits. Compared to Osborne Enterprises, which is involved in multiple scientific fields and even has ties to the Department of Defense, it is undoubtedly the difference between an ant and an elephant. If you want to gain a foothold in this world, strong power is indispensable, but wealth and status far beyond ordinary people are also one of Sean's goals. In a country controlled by capital and interests, if you want to gain more power than ordinary people, you will definitely need the support of a large enough force. Let's set a small goal first. Superheroes, infinite gems, etc. are still too far away from me now. Sean thought for a while, and the ideas in his mind gradually became clear. No matter how great the goal is, it needs to be achieved step by step. Rome was not built overnight. Frank D'Amico's gang, Osborne Enterprises, they will all become stepping stones and springboards for him to move forward, helping him become stronger faster. A remote, deserted suburban factory. Two figures, one large and one small, stood in an open field, some distance apart from each other. A middle-aged man wearing a brown jacket and glasses, holding a pistol in his hand, was talking to a blond boy not far away. What was Loli talking about? "Dad, I'm a little scared." "Don't be afraid, Mindy, baby, you have grown up, there is nothing to be afraid of." The breeze blew the middle-aged man's thin hair. He held a pistol and comforted the little Lolita in a gentle tone, as if what happened next was trivial and not worth fearing at all. "Will it hurt?" asked the cute Loli named Mindy. "Kid, it's only a second." The speed of a pistol bullet exceeds 800 meters per second. So, of course you will be knocked down in such a short distance, but it will not be as painful as a punch to the chest. Quote. The middle-aged man said calmly, then loaded the magazine, raised his pistol, and pointed it at the little blonde girl standing 30 meters away. "I hate getting punched in the chest," Mindy muttered, her little face scrunched up. "You're going to be okay, baby." As soon as he finished speaking, a gunshot rang out, and the faint smoke dissipated. The little Loli standing not far away fell down, and a ball of fine fluff burst out of her pink down jacket, which was blown away by the wind like snowflakes. Ahem. After about a few seconds, the little Loli recovered from the violent impact on her chest, opened her pink down jacket, and dug out a metal bullet from the body armor inside. "How's it going?" "Not bad, isn't it fun? Now you know what it feels like. If a drug addict pulls a pistol at you, you won't be scared anymore." The middle-aged man walked up to his daughter and warned the little girl like a teacher. He didn't feel at all how dangerous and perverted his education method was. This middle-aged man who looks like an ordinary person is called Damon McCready. He was once a rising star in the police department and had a bright future. Because he was eyeing the West Coast drug lord Frank D'Amico, Instead, he was falsely accused of being a gangster who colluded with drug dealers, and was sent to prison. But this was the beginning of the tragedy. This wrong policeman and his pregnant wife were unable to face life while in prison. Due to the pressure, he took medicine and committed suicide. Fortunately, the child in his belly was successfully born. This is the tragic story that happened to a middle-aged man. He changed from a respected policeman to a tainted prisoner. So after 5 years, he was released from prison and was determined to avenge his enemies. He used almost crazy methods to get revenge on his enemies. To train his daughter, he turned an originally cute and innocent little blonde Lolita into a murderous weapon that is agile and proficient in firearms. The ultimate goal is to overturn Frank D'Amico's drug den and avenge his dead wife. "Those junkies don't scare me," Mindy said dissatisfied. "This is my good daughter, stand up, do it twice more, and then go home." The middle-aged man pulled up the little Loli who fell on the ground. "Are you coming?" Mindy's eyes widened, and then she asked, "Okay, I'm going to go to the bowling alley on the way back, and I'll also have a chocolate sundae." The middle-aged man smiled and agreed to all his daughter's requests. Recently, a guy seemed to be targeting Frank D'Amico, and he always acted before him, so the former policeman decided to speed up the action and kill the victim as soon as possible. The West Coast drug lord who ruined his family is sent to hell. Bowling alley. "Harry, why do you want to travel to the West Coast?" Peter, who was carrying a bowling ball, looked puzzled. He didn't know why his friend had the sudden idea to take a self-driving trip from New York on the East Coast. He also took Mary Jane and Sean with him to form a small tour group. "I just have the idea of traveling, Peter. We have finally graduated from high school and are about to enter college life. This needs to be celebrated. As for why it is the West Coast, this is Sean's suggestion." Harry enthusiastically threw a bowling ball and knocked down a bunch of white pins. Sean, who was sitting in his seat, smiled and said nothing. Of course he knew that young Master Osborne was not interested in drinking. He obviously wanted to take it with him. His new girlfriend Mary Jane is on a happy trip, and he and Peter are just taking her along. As for coming to the West Coast, this is indeed his suggestion. The cake must be eaten one bite at a time, and the enemies must be dealt with one by one. Since he said he would personally visit Mr. Frank Deo, he will naturally not break his promise. Thinking that his high school career was over and he would enter a new college life, Sean felt a little excited. This meant that he would be more free in the future, and he would have more suitable excuses and cover for his subsequent achievements. After all, there is no shortage of so-called geniuses in this country. For example, Tony Stark, the playboy and billionaire reported in the media all the time, is said to be a talented scientist who has emerged in college. Sean, why don't you come and play 2 games? Harry greeted his friend who was sitting on the chair. He originally thought that Sean was a lonely weirdo. Unexpectedly, after getting to know him, he found that he was very interesting. Compared with Peter, who only immersed himself in reading and was silent, Sean was more humorous. He was funny and seemed to know what he was thinking, and he could always hit the mark with his words. This made Harry, who had not had many friends since childhood, feel very comfortable. You play. Sean waved his hand and refused. His attention was attracted by a father and daughter next door. A little Lolita eating a chocolate sundae, and a middle-aged man eating French fries and a burger. They looked very ordinary, but the conversation between them made Sean, who overheard it, very interested. Have you ever thought about a birthday present? The middle-aged man who looked like his father asked. Can I get a puppy? A cute fluffy puppy, and a Boraz doll that looks like a movie star. The little Loli stirred the sundae ice cream and smiled happily after seeing her father's ugly expression. I'm kidding you, Dad, I actually want a handmade Model 42 butterfly knife. Baby, you always like to play pranks. I will give you 2 Filipino butterfly knives as a birthday present. What a strange father and daughter. What father would give his daughter a dangerous item like a butterfly knife as a birthday gift? Moreover, the little blonde Loli, who looked to be only 7 or 8 years old, actually had an expression of liking on her face, which was incredible. After walking out of the bowling alley, looking at Harry and Mary Jane walking in front, chatting and laughing, and Peter, who had no presence, Sean let out a long breath. It was going to be a busy night. As night falls in the city, the gorgeous lights are like torches, illuminating the bustling and noisy steel forest. Even though it is already 2 o'clock in the morning, the city center with dense high-rise buildings and crowded people is still bustling with singing, dancing and feasting. Scene. The slums where homeless people and low-class people gather are another story, with dilapidated and old apartment buildings, as well as hippies and black people wandering the streets. If you look deeper, you can still see some people wearing scantily clad clothes and posing. There are street girls and gang members in small groups. It is full of drugs and crime. It is a dark place where the light of the law cannot shine. Which one is Rasul? Wearing a leather jacket, Sean came to the slums and entered an old apartment with a sense of time. The moment he opened the door and walked into the room, he couldn't help but frown. The place was full of all kinds of difficulties. The smell of cigarettes, beer and marijuana mixed into a weird smell that made people feel sick. The room was filled with noisy sounds. Everyone was doing their own thing, taking drugs, sleeping, and playing games. They didn't seem to notice anyone walking in. For this reason, Sean had to increase his volume and ask again. I'm Rasul, can't you see my big breasts? A girl wearing revealing clothes and heavy makeup stood up, looked at the young boy who walked into the room, and bent slightly to tease him. Sean glanced at it, and then looked at the heavily made-up face, showing no interest at all. I want to ask Mr. Rasul about something. You want to know something from me? Do you want to know which street your mother does business on? Or do you mean you can't find your way home? Ha ha ha. Amid the laughter, a black man with dreadlocks stood up and looked at Sean, who looked like a student, with an obvious lack of kindness in his eyes. Oh, you are Rasul. Sean narrowed his eyes. Originally I just wanted to ask you about Frank Deo, but now you have to pay a price for your inappropriate words and deeds. The young boy's words once again caused laughter in the room, and the fierce black men stood up one after another, as if staring at a little lamb that had strayed into a pack of wolves. This is not a school. No teachers or parents will come to save you, little one. The black man named Rasul picked up the dagger on the table and gestured in a threatening manner. He was very much looking forward to the pitiful little guy being scared to the point of peeing his pants. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, excluding this lady dressed like a street girl, there are 6 people in total. Sean counted the number of people in the room. I actually don't like to use violence. Quote. As soon as he finished speaking, a big black man with an impatient personality rushed up, as if he couldn't wait to teach Sean a lesson. The young boy took a half step back and twisted the other person's arm faster, and the white bones were piercing. The skin was broken, and a stream of blood spurted out, splattering on the floor and sofa. Ignoring the screams of pain, Sean walked around casually, knocking down the opponents who rushed forward one by one. In just half a minute, except for the exposed girl had a look of fear and disbelief on her face. Only Rasul was left standing. This black man who was extremely arrogant just now was holding the dagger gingerly. His legs were shaking involuntarily, as if he was about to wet his pants at any time. I just want to ask you about something. Why does it always have to be so complicated? Sean slowly approached the black man Rasul, who backed away step by step. When he was close to the corner, this guy finally yelled and swung his dagger towards the young boy because of the growing fear in his heart. Click. A clear voice sounded, and Rasul's arm was broken like chopsticks. The devil-like young boy took the dagger snatched from his hand and said with a smile, I said, you have to fight for your own. There is a small price to pay for inappropriate words and deeds. After saying that, Sean stabbed the dagger into the black man Rasul's thigh without blinking. Then it's time for prizes and questions. I'll ask you to answer. If the answer satisfies me, I don't mind before leaving. Call an ambulance for you. A few minutes later, Sean got the news he wanted and left directly from the fire stairway through the window. However, on the top floor of the building hundreds of meters away, someone had a clear view of what had just happened through the scope of a sniper rifle. Dad, someone beat those guys before us. The little girl wearing a purple wig said excitedly. Damon, the heavily armed former police officer, looked solemn. Is there someone like him who is eyeing that Frank Deo? Let's follow him and see what he's going to do. A middle-aged man carrying a Bartley heavy sniper rifle and his daughter followed him all the way up. Fark, do you know what time it is? Frank Deo yelled into the phone angrily. Anyone who is woken up from bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the middle of the night will not be in a good mood. Frank, something bad has happened. Rasul has been arrested by the police. Frank's henchmen reported what happened tonight. Several dens had been destroyed, and now the police station was filled with drug dealers, all of whom were the backbone of Frank's gang. Does this mean that almost all of my men were caught? And a large amount of goods were lost? Am I now the most bullied person on the West Coast? Frank roared angrily. He had never been provoked like this before. As the leading drug lord on the West Coast, even the police chief had to give himself some face. Tell me who that fool is. I want to see his head on my desk tomorrow morning. Frank smashed the bedside phone. The gangster and drug lord was already furious. If this happened often in the future, who would do business with him? Losing the channel for smuggling goods would be fatal to him. Strike. Without the huge profits from the drug business, what would he do to support the large number of people under his command? The gang boss sounds very majestic, but in fact he relies on profit support, otherwise there would be so many people working for him. You better not let me catch you. Otherwise I will make you regret being born in this world. Frank was wearing pajamas, poured a glass of whiskey from the wine cabinet, and looked at the bustling night scene outside the floor-to-ceiling window. His anger and panic gradually subsided. He was just a little guy hiding in a dark corner. He posed no threat to himself. The outside world announced a high-priced reward, and soon someone took the other party's head to claim the reward. Frank, who had experienced strong winds and waves, drank the liquid in the cup in one gulp, with a contemptuous smile in his eyes. There were many people who wanted to kill him over the years, but in the end, they all ended up being poured into concrete pillars and thrown into the river to feed the fish. Bang bang bang. A series of gunshots woke up the brooding Frank. He picked up the phone on his desk and asked, "Can't you just let me be quiet tonight?" "I'm afraid not, Mr. Frank Deo. I said I would come to visit you in person." A young man's voice came from the other end of the phone, with a faint smile. Don't worry, we will meet soon. Among the gangs on the West Coast, there are many rumors about Frank Deo. For example, he likes to pour his enemies into concrete pillars and throw them into the river, or uses industrial microwave ovens to bake people into a ball of plasma. Most of them are some gossip that reflects the cruelty and coldness of the other party. But what interests more people is the strong fortress standing in the city center. After the drug lord succeeded in his career, he bought an entire building and transformed it into his own residence. The floors there were heavily armed gunmen and bodyguards from top to bottom. It was absolutely impossible for anyone to enter the top floor, that is, Frank Deo's residence, without his permission. And half an hour ago, someone chose to use the simplest or most stupid way to directly visit the drug lord. Boom, boom, boom. The bodyguard guarding the door saw a young man wearing a leather jacket and a motorcycle helmet standing outside, looking strange. Did this guy take the wrong medicine? Doesn't he know where this place is? The bodyguard clenched the pistol at his waist and swaggered to the door, saying in a ferocious tone, "Boy, give you 3 seconds to disappear immediately, otherwise you will die ugly tonight." "What's wrong, Johnny? What were you doing standing at the door for so long?" The other two bodyguards saw their companion standing at the door for a long time and felt something was wrong. They drew their pistols and walked forward. They found that the young man wearing a helmet had one hand on Johnny's neck. The strong bodyguard man said the sound of ho-ho, breathing hard, as if suffocating at any moment. Bang bang. The young man wearing a helmet used Johnny's body to block the 2 shots fired. At the same time, he rushed to a bodyguard at an extremely fast speed, elbowed him hard, grabbed the other person's pistol, and then fired. Shot another bodyguard. A set of coherent movements, clean and neat, like an elite soldier who has received rigorous training, making it impossible for anyone to react. "Let me borrow your access card," the young man said gently, and then he broke the bodyguard's neck. Jingle bell. Just as Sean was about to take the elevator upstairs, the phone rang at the front desk, so he had a friendly conversation with Mr. Frank Deo, who lived on the top floor, and then rushed all the way upstairs. The huge gunshot bang 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 woke up the people on the whole floor. After a panic, everyone picked up their guns and rushed to the door. They knew that an enemy was invading. Although they didn't know who it was, Boss Frank had already, as I said, anyone who breaks into this building tonight will be killed without mercy. The elevator door slowly slid open. The gunmen guarding the door widened their eyes. There was no one inside. Where did that guy go? There is only one way to get up from the ground floor, and that is through the elevator. Why did that guy disappear inexplicably? Just when everyone was confused about the situation, a figure rushed down from the top of the elevator, like a dark and swift ghost. The muzzle of the gun sprayed out bright firelight in midair, and the rotating bullets penetrated the enemy's head one after another, harvesting fresh food. Living life. The gunman guarding the door was caught off guard. He only heard a burst of fierce gunfire. The partners in front fell one after another, as if they were facing an elite force with strong firepower. The firelight flashed wantonly and the gunfire sounded continuously. They were suppressed to the point where they were unable to organize an effective counterattack and could only passively withstand the fierce attacks. I don't know how long it took, but the gunfire finally stopped. The gunman who was hiding behind the obstacle carefully looked out and found that more than 10 people had fallen on the ground, and all of them were shot in fatal places, without even a chance to struggle. No. Where is he? How could I know? That guy must be out of bullets. Let's rush up together and shoot him to death. The gunmen were talking a lot, but no one was willing to go out immediately. The clean killing just now left a psychological shadow on them. It is said that there was only one person on the other side, but they suppressed more than 30 people on their side until they could not move, and even I don't even have the courage to fight back. This is simply terrible. The space suddenly became quiet, and it was as if one could hear one's own breathing clearly. After an extremely long few minutes, the gunmen finally regained their courage, plucked up the courage, and walked out of the corner of the room, trying to find the intruder. Then, gunfire broke out. Send them all down. No, let's all stay here. When that fool comes, beat him into a hornet's nest. Frank no longer had the calm demeanor of the gangster and drug lord before, and there was obvious panic in his tone. In all these years, no one had come to the door so brazenly and unstoppably as that young man did. "Boss, he's almost reaching the 20th floor," a man holding a Remington shotgun said. "Fake, what a bunch of losers. There are so many people and dozens of guns, but they can't stop even one person." Frank cursed angrily. Until now, he still didn't understand who he had offended to cause such a horrific blow. The killings continue. The elevator goes all the way. Relying on his extraordinary perception and strong physical fitness, Sean was engaged in a nearly one-sided massacre. The professionally trained bodyguards and gunmen moved slowly and disorganized in front of him, making them vulnerable to a single blow. While he was going up, two other figures, one large and one small, followed closely. The former policeman Damon never thought that he would step into the lair of his lifelong enemy in such a simple way, that terrible. The young man is like a precise and cold killing machine, and no one can stop him. "Mindy, let's go up the elevator shaft," Damon said to his daughter. He didn't want Frank D'Amico to be killed by others. While everyone's attention was attracted by the young man wearing a helmet, Damon rushed to the top with his daughter. He had been investigating Frank D'Amico for a long time and knew that the other party bribed the police. That's why he has been engaging in the illegal business of smuggling drugs unscrupulously. Even if the drug lord is imprisoned, he will probably be released soon, so Damon chooses to take revenge in his own way. "Don't be afraid, Mindy, Daddy will stand in front of you." As a professionally trained former police officer, Damon possesses extremely strong combat capabilities, and his daughter also possesses strength far beyond her age due to crazy training. Their large and small combination destroyed several warehouses owned by Frank D'Amico. In fact, the reason why Sean's actions went so smoothly was more or less related to this. "Frank D'Amico, here I come." Frank D'Amico, the owner of this building, was sitting at his desk at this time, holding a pistol tightly in one hand and staring at the door. Any sound coming from outside would cause this. The nervousness of Mr. Drug Lord. Frank deployed at least 20 gunmen outside, all armed with Remington shotguns. As long as that fool dared to show up, the violent firepower would be enough to tear the opponent into pieces. The big drug lords on the West Coast kept comforting themselves that even if the guy who broke into his territory was an experienced mercenary, under the attack of human sea tactics and fierce firepower, he would only end up with a tragic ending. "Rom, what's the situation outside?" Frank opened his mouth and asked, his voice a little dry. If the intruder could really break through the powerful firepower outside, then he had prepared a big gift for the other party. "The scene is very chaotic. There seems to be more than one intruder. Someone just cut off the power supply system of the entire building. However, separate power equipment is used on the top floor, so there will be no problem." The burly man guarding the door replied that he was a fighter carefully trained by the boss Frank. He had achieved 10 consecutive victories in the underground boxing ring and had always been a trump card in Frank's hand. "Are there any accomplices? Don't let me find out the true identity of this idiot, otherwise I will definitely let him experience the pain of losing everything." Frank's eyes flashed with ferocity, and his sinister face looked even more terrifying. As a gangster who has been on the West Coast for many years, this was the first time that he was forced into this kind of situation. Bang bang bang. Violent gunshots suddenly sounded outside. Frank subconsciously raised his pistol and pointed at the door nervously. He did not expect that the intruder rushed up so quickly. The nearly 50 gunmen below were unable to stop the attack. The screams and violent gunfire were mixed together, and bullets flew across the limited space, intertwining into a dense network. The former policeman Damon, who was hiding behind the pillar, really did not expect that Frank D'Amico actually arranged with such strong firepower. The shotguns with astonishing lethality fired in unison, making a deafening noise like the roar of thunder. Damon huddled behind the pillar, shotgun blasts sending sawdust flying. The gunman formed an encirclement and approached step by step. If he stuck his head out, he would be immediately blasted into a puddle of mud. The petite Mindy hid above the elevator. Damon made a tactical gesture to his daughter, and then rushed out, firing a volley of 2 guns in his hand, taking away 2 living lives in an instant. At the same time, people rushed up and down the elevator. A small purple figure appeared, and several darts hit the gunman's wrist. Then he rolled flexibly, and the innocent and cute loli instantly transformed into a violent and powerful killing weapon. The darts on her waist continued to shoot out, and the butterfly knife in her hand drew a series of icy trajectories. The top floor building instantly became a bloody sheer field. The little loli who was proficient in cold weapons cooperated with her father who fired the gun. For a moment, she was invincible. Rom, go out and take a look at the situation. This fierce battle probably lasted for nearly 10 minutes. Hearing the gunshots outside becoming more and more sporadic, Frank felt a little uneasy. The burly man with a strong build opened the door, and a purple-haired little loli flew towards him. As a terrifying figure who had struggled and fought in the underground boxing ring, Rom did not panic. He punched the old man with his backhand. The young loli flew away. Frank D'Amico. Damon saw the face of his enemy, and his chest boiled with rage. If it weren't for the burly Rom standing in front of him, he would have rushed over and let the West Coast drug lord experience what pain and torture is. Isn't the intruder a young man? Frank was a little confused when he saw two figures, one large and one small, outside. Rom, kill them. Okay, boss. Rom shook his neck and walked towards Damon, but was blocked by the little loli who stood up again, waving a delicate and sharp butterfly knife in her hand. Mindy, who had received crazy training, may not be strong enough, but she has the flexibility to skills, and extraordinary agility. Seeing that his daughter had temporarily entangled the burly man, Damon strode into the room and knocked away Frank's pistol with the tactical dagger he was wearing. This former policeman bent on revenge finally got the chance to take revenge after waiting for many years. Frank D'Amico, I'm here to send you to hell. You've been sabotaging my business and sending all my men to the police station. Frank pretended to be calm and quietly put his injured hand under the table. Of course, it's too easy to kill you with one shot. I want to destroy your career, just like you destroyed my life and family. There was deep hatred in Damon's eyes. He was originally a policeman, but he was forced to become a criminal by the other party. His wife committed suicide by taking medicine, and it can be said that the family was ruined. Oh, I remembered, you were the policeman I sent to prison. Frank finally remembered the identity of the other party. A policeman was targeting him back then. As a result, he bribed the internal staff of the police station, forged evidence and sent the guy to jail. Actually, we can talk about it. After all, it's all in the past. There's nothing to say, Frank D'Amico, it's all over. Damon rushed forward, ready to kill this lifelong enemy. Well, it's all over. Frank kicked the heavy desk open, and Damon dodged sideways to avoid the huge thing that hit him out of thin air. When he was about to step forward, the dark hole was aimed at him. Ding dong. The elevator finally reached the top floor. Sean stared with wide eyes at the corpses on the ground, the scattered bullets, and a burly man fighting fiercely with the little Lolita. What's going on? Does anyone still want to kill Frank D'Amico? The West Coast drug lord has many enemies. Sean muttered silently. Just when he was hesitating who to help, a huge explosion resounded through the space on the top floor. The impact force surged like a wave and destroyed all the light bulbs and lamps on the ceiling. Bright the floor-to-ceiling window glass was also shattered, sawdust flew across the bookshelves on both sides, and shreds of paper were flying. Sean was stunned again, looking at Frank D'Amico, who was holding a rocket launcher in both hands, and the middle-aged man lying half dead on the ground. He felt as if he had changed a certain normal timeline. After a brief daze, Sean raised his hand and fired several shots, hitting Frank's hands and legs respectively. He even took out the rocket launcher. It was really too much. By the way, in a humanitarian spirit of helping others, Sean shot the burly man again. After all, the little loli was so cute. Walking up to Frank unhurriedly, Sean took off his motorcycle helmet, revealing his young face. Mr. Frank D'Amico, I said I would come to visit you personally. The big drug lord on the West Coast stared with anger. It turned out that the real intruder was a young man like a student. Who are you? Frank asked, enduring the pain. Since the grudge between you and me is quite complicated, I won't say much more. Anyway, if you want to blame, just blame that fool who blackmailed high school students for nothing. Gangs have to pay attention to quality when recruiting people. Sean pointed the gun at him. On Frank's head, the tone was gentle and friendly. Goodbye. Ignoring Frank D'Amico, whose eyes were gradually losing their luster, Sean turned to look at the little loli who was hugging the middle-aged man and crying bitterly. Suddenly, he had a headache. Should he stay? Hearing the sirens coming from below, the young boy had no choice but to walk up to the purple-haired little loli and said with a sincere face, do you want to run away together? I was out for the day, why didn't you wash the dishes and not even clear away the unfinished pizza? When Sean returned to the apartment, he looked at the messy house and angrily stared at the little blonde loli lying on the sofa eating ice cream. 2 days had passed since he dealt with Frank Deo. Out of temporary sympathy, he put when they brought this little girl named Mindy McCready home, the police had blocked the downstairs and they managed to escape quietly through the construction pipes. Who would have thought that this little loli who had just experienced the pain of losing her father, her innocent and cute appearance was just her disguise, and Sean had only been living with her for 2 days, and she was already suffering from a headache. Isn't it your job to wash the dishes? The book says that as a gentleman, you should pay more for ladies, especially a little lady like me. Mindy stared with big watery eyes, with an innocent and aggrieved expression on her face, which almost made Sean feel that she had indeed said something very outrageous. Can't afford to offend, can't afford to offend. Sean put down his school bag and muttered silently, and walked to the kitchen obediently to clean the dishes. Never try to reason with a woman, especially a much younger devil. Is there any news from the police? Sean asked Mindy, who was lying on the sofa watching TV while washing the dishes. Such a serious and vicious incident happened, and the police stations on the West Coast seemed to have blocked the news. But they didn't find any useful information. I cleared all the surveillance cameras before I left, and all the gunmen who saw us were dead. Yes, that guy named Larsu and the others have also been cleaned up. The little loli with a golden twintail said calmly, licking the ice cream in her hand with a look of enjoyment. Mindy, who had been severely and inhumanely trained by her father since she was a child, had never lived such a relaxed and peaceful life as she does now. But you are very strange. You are obviously in better physical condition than my father, but you don't even know a little bit about disguise, investigation, or cyber hacking techniques. The little loli took a big bite of the ice cream. She lived with Sean for 2 days, and was full of curiosity about this young boy who came to Frank Deo's home after a disagreement. He had amazing physical fitness, but, as if he had no formal training at all, he was very unfamiliar with fighting, and firearms. He relied purely on inhuman strength and strong body control to crush Frank Deo's men all the way. This is hard to explain to you. Ordinary people go through exercise and training the day after tomorrow. I am different from them. Sean was vague. It was impossible for him to tell anyone about the source of his strength. If you can call me teacher, then I can teach you this. Little loli suddenly seemed to have thought of something, and sat up from the sofa suddenly, with ice cream almost smearing on her face. You proceed now. The training is all about physical fitness, and the results are very slow. What you lack is not strength, but the means and skills of how to use it. I can teach you all these, as well as the knowledge of how to disguise, explode, and assassinate. When Sean heard the little loli talking excitedly, he couldn't help wiping his forehead. He felt surprised in his heart. What kind of pervert was Mindy's father to teach his daughter to be an out-and-out killer? Sharp weapon. Ding. Activate the card system. A clear line of text suddenly appeared in his mind, and Sean squinted his eyes. This system, which had no sense of existence since the body was transformed, kept talking while Mindy was formulating a training plan for herself. The ground shimmered with soft white light. Immersed in his thoughts, Sean found that the originally monotonous system framework now had an additional card option, a card with the words, Super Killer Girl, branded on it shining brightly. Skill card. Firearms proficiency, a level. How is this going? Sean opened his eyes and suddenly looked at Mindy, who was sitting on the sofa in the living room assembling a Colt. The little blonde girl flexibly and skillfully disassembled the pistol into parts, and then quickly reassembled it, like it seemed like he was deliberately showing off, and he kept analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of this pistol. Can I get skill cards from characters? Sean thought for a while and remembered that it seemed that in the original game, there seemed to be such a setting, and the exclusive skills of superheroes could be obtained through extraction. It seems that this system is indeed quite useful, but I have neglected development and mining before. Sean couldn't help but shook his head. This was indeed his mistake. Since coming to this world, he thought that with the power of his transformed body, he would slowly develop and grow, and finally gain a foothold. This is the feeling of expansion that arises in the heart after suddenly gaining power. If you think about it carefully, this world is full of all kinds of powerful people. There are genius scientists flying around in steel armor. When angry, they will turn into giants. A terrifying big man, a divine prince from an extraterrestrial civilization, and even in the vast universe, there is a notorious cosmic overlord who always covets this blue planet. It is not a simple and easy thing to survive in such a dangerous and wonderful world. At least the desire and pursuit of power should be endless. Sean suddenly fell into calm thinking. Perhaps it was because he didn't encounter any setbacks after gaining strength. Those gangsters were simply vulnerable, which led to some arrogance in his heart. His thoughts touched the soft white light in his mind, and a smile appeared on Sean's face. The card he obtained suddenly turned into a rain of light and poured into the depths of his consciousness. Mindy, do you want to train me as a mercenary? The young boy touched the little Loli's head, and with both hands, he dismantled the reassembled Colt pistol into scattered parts in an instant, and then put it back together in a daze. His movements were smooth and fast, as if he had been trained for many times. Mindy opened her mouth wide with a cute expression of surprise. She knew that Sean had no knowledge about firearms at all. At most, he could only turn on the safety and pull the trigger. Hee, this is a gift, you can learn it just by looking at it. Looking at the little Loli who kept questioning him, Sean smiled mysteriously and helped him clean up the messy apartment. What do you want for dinner? Tacos, there's a great pizza place up the block. And a strawberry sundae. Aren't you afraid of getting fat if you eat so much? Shut up, I'm your teacher now, be respectful, don't touch my head. Figures one large and one small walked on the streets in the evening. The afterglow of the setting sun stretched their shadows very long. Farther away was the bustling city, like a cold and huge steel jungle, gradually surrounding these two tiny people. The figures were drowned. Chapter 14. Harry Osborne returned to his mansion in Manhattan, New York. Since graduating from high school, he has moved out of home independently and lived in the university dormitory with his best friend Peter. However, due to the recent easing of the cold relationship with his father, he is no longer the same as before. He was so nervous, so he went home more often. Harry put down his backpack and walked into the house. Since he traveled to the West Coast, his relationship with his new girlfriend Mary Jane has developed by leaps and bounds. The two quickly fell in love and lived a sweet and happy life every day. This made the whole family. Peter, who was slapped on the face with cold dog food every day, felt very distressed and depressed. Why do you have time to go home today? Harry's father was sitting in the living room. The helmsman of Osborne Industries was tall, with thin cheeks and sharp eyes like a hawk. He exuded a majestic aura that made people afraid to look at him. He is Norman Osborne, a well-known business tycoon in New York. He founded Osborne Industries from scratch more than 10 years ago. From a fledgling unknown to now having astonishing wealth and respected status, he can be said to be quite a legend. Big shot of color. School is on vacation, I'll come back to get some things. Harry said calmly. He had been sent to boarding school since he was a child, and his relationship with his father was very alienated. The two of them rarely had tender moments of communication and heart-to-heart conversations. I heard that you have a girlfriend. Norman Osborne leaned on the sofa and looked at his son, who was a little embarrassed in front of him. He couldn't help but be very disappointed. He had always hoped to train Harry to be a decisive and courageous man who could take over Osborne's job in the future. Industry, this is his life's efforts and hard work, and of course it needs someone to inherit and carry forward it. But the results were disappointing. Harry's abilities were mediocre. Although he had excellent qualities, he only wanted to have fun, and had no business talent at all. So over time, Norman gave up on the idea of training his son to be his successor. Anyway, he will be in charge of Osborne Industries for a long time, leading the company to a higher peak and completely building it into a family giant like Stark Industries. Well, I'm going to bring her to you in a few days. She's a very good girl. Harry said good things about his girlfriend in front of his father. This young Master Osborne had already fallen in love and couldn't extricate himself. I know some information about her. That girl named Mary Jane is not worthy of you, Harry. Norman objected directly and decisively. She came from such a family, never went to college, and did the dream of a big star, but she doesn't understand the etiquette and upbringing of the upper class at all. How can such a girl enter the Osborne family? Ignoring his son's livid face, Norman Osborne showed his strong side as a father. The Osborne family finally took off their nouveau riche hat and entered New York's upper-class society. If his son married a girl from a humble background, this will make the outside world laugh. I've seen a lot of girls who love vanity, Harry. They only care about your status and wealth. Norman Osborne was serious and thoughtful. When Harry was young, he put all his energy into his heavy career and was often too busy to go home. Later, he even sent his son to boarding school. This created the relationship between father and son. Now that the operation of Osborne Industries is gradually getting on the right track, Norman is also trying to mend his relationship with Harry, but he is not very good at expressing his feelings, so he always does it by facing the subordinates of the company. The conversation actually intensified the conflict between father and son. I have something else to do, so I won't be eating at home. Harry picked up his backpack and was about to leave. He didn't want to argue with his father. Anyway, he had heard this type of parental power dialogue many times. By the way, the day after tomorrow is the carnival. I invited Peter and some friends. I hope you can come then. After hesitating, Harry sent an invitation to his father and walked out of the house. The empty and luxurious mansion returned to tranquility. Norman Osborne leaned on the sofa tiredly, looking a little disappointed. Harry just mentioned Peter, and that young man was quite good. Compared to Harry, who has mediocre abilities, Norman admires his son's best friend Peter Parker more. He knows that shy young man, who has an unusual interest in scientific research and has excellent grades in school. Norman even had the idea of arranging Peter to work at Osborne Industries after graduation, so that he could train a trustworthy helper for Harry in the company. The old guys on the board of directors were all hungry people who could eat people without spitting out their bones. Wolf, if he hadn't been deliberately suppressing their power, Osborne Industries would have been sold to the vampires on Wall Street by these people. Rubbing his slightly aching head, Norman closed his eyes. Osborne Industries was about to undergo a huge transformation recently. He was preparing to launch an impact on the military industry, establish a friendly relationship with the Ministry of Defense, and then become overcome behemoths like industry and gain respectable status and power. For this reason, Norman has invested almost all of his wealth in the research and development of human enhancement agents, and is now at the stage of almost producing results. This project came from the Super Soldier Project to create Captain America during the Second World War of the last century. The military developed a serum at that time that could make people become powerful super soldiers. Unfortunately, the inventor was later assassinated. The formula of the serum has also become a secret that no one knows. For many years, the military has never given up on the pursuit and research of super soldiers. Norman saw a huge opportunity in this, so he took over the research project on human enhancement agents, which will allow Osborne Industries to complete a leap. It is the best springboard for rapid development and becomes a defense contractor for the military in one fell swoop. If he completes this project and gains the favor of several military officials, he may also be able to set his sights on the political arena and have the opportunity to become a member of Parliament Hill. Norman's imagination was running wild, and he couldn't wait to see the dreamed-up situation become a reality. During World War II, Howard Stark, the founder of Stark Industries, relied on his extraordinary mind and means to become the leader of American military weapons. A powerful provider, this is why Stark Industries, now known as the leader in the military industry, has emerged. It was precisely because Howard Stark sees the opportunity in life that he achieved the brilliant achievements of Stark Industries. If he can do it, why can't he succeed? Norman is full of confidence. As long as the human enhancement agent is successfully developed, Osborne Industries can be promoted to a guest of the Ministry of Defense. The large number of orders and the soaring stock price are enough for him to lead the Osborne family into a new future. As long as the people in the Ministry of Defense are satisfied tomorrow, everything will be perfect. A proud smile appeared on Norman's face. He had been waiting for this day for too long. With excitement, he slowly closed his eyes and fell into a wonderful dream. The next morning, an inspection team from the Ministry of National Defense came to Osborne Industries. The leader was General Saw. He seemed to turn a blind eye to Norman Osborne's enthusiastic greeting and coldly proposed to go directly to the research room, check the progress and situation of human enhancement potions. The team sent by the Ministry of National Defense swarmed into the research room under the leadership of General Suo, followed by Norman. He vaguely realized that something was wrong with the situation, but he did not think about it for a moment. Walking into the door of the research room, the chief scientist in a white uniform introduced the new aircraft to the Ministry of Defense team. This is also a research project conducted by Osborne Industries. The previous Ministry of Defense procurement team expressed interest in it. Quote, This is the first-generation prototype. It is made of new alloy materials and is equipped with a gravity-sensing system. It can perfectly solve the key problems of aerial flight and balance. It has a load capacity of about 1 ton and a flight speed of nearly 500 miles per hour. It is also equipped with it has remote control equipment that can carry 12 miniature air-to-ground missiles, a miniature machine gun and 5,000 rounds of ammunition. The cost is about $6 million. The chief scientist pointed to an aircraft floating in midair and introduced it. It was shaped like a big bat with its wings spread out. Its whole body was glowing with dark green metallic light. The user could stand on it and control it. The engine at the tail, a green energy halo, was sprayed out, creating strong wind pressure and a harsh noise, which almost drowned out his explanation voice. I have no interest in a little toy like this, it's outdated. General Suo, the leader of the Ministry of National Defense team, said indifferently. He glanced at the aircraft hovering in the sky, with a hint of contempt in his eyes. The high cost and narrow and low-end application range destined this new aircraft to be unattractive to the military. What they need are weapons that can be mass-produced and have astonishing lethality, not high-end products that are used to defraud research funds. The reason why Tony Stark is loved by military bosses is because he can always come up with some good things of good value, and they all have extremely high technical content and will never become outdated easily. General, this new aircraft is the last procurement weapon designated by the Ministry of Defense. Norman stepped forward in time to relieve the embarrassment of the scientific research director, with an eager smile on his face. Although General Suo had a bad attitude, he was not willing to offend this important official of the Ministry of National Defense. Needless to say, it has been swept into the dustbin of history just like my predecessor. You may not know it yet, but that guy was dismissed for accepting bribes. I will not make this mistake again. Norman was shocked when he heard this. If this is true, it means that all the conditions originally negotiated between Osborne Industries and the Ministry of Defense have been cancelled and everything will have to start again. Looking at General Suo with an arrogant look on his face, Norman suddenly felt a little bad. His eyes swept across the research room and found that 2 directors who usually did not participate in industrial production had also arrived here. Mr. Ba, who was wearing glasses, and Mr. Fei, who is in a wheelchair, are the 2 major shareholders of the company. They are backed by the power of Wall Street. They are pure and annoying financial speculators who only want to squeeze more profits from Osborne Industries. Why are they 2 here? Secretly wondering, Norman had no time to think about it. General Suo was not interested in new aircraft, so he had to quickly submit a report on the physical enhancement plan. This new procurement officer of the Ministry of National Defense was actually more difficult to serve than the previous one. We subjected mice to vapor inhalation experiments, and their physical energy increased 8-fold. This proves that our experimental direction is correct. As long as we continue to research, we will soon be able to create a super serum from the World War II era. Norman followed General Suo closely, telling him in detail the experimental process of human enhancement potions, while also deliberately ignoring some immature shortcomings. Sounds pretty good. General Suo nodded lightly and asked casually, are there any side effects? Norman Osborne's expression changed immediately. He looked at the scientific research director standing aside. The balding old man couldn't bear General Suo's sharp gaze and told the truth. After undergoing the vapor inhalation test, the mice showed obvious violent tendencies and crazy aggression. We must return the entire study to the equation stage, and perhaps we can solve this problem. General, this is just a small problem. It won't take long to resolve. Enough, Mr. Osborne. General Thaw coldly interrupted Norman's defense. The procurement officer of the Ministry of National Defense sneered, you just tried to deceive the Ministry of National Defense. This is an unforgivable fault. And like this, the research results are not satisfactory to the military at all. What we need are super soldiers. If you can let me see a Captain America, in 2 weeks, then everything will be easy. Remember, I only give Osborne Industries 2 weeks. If it doesn't work by then, I will revoke your research funding and your qualifications as a Ministry of Defense procurement company." General Saw announced the verdict condescendingly, and then walked away with the inspection team of the Ministry of National Defense, leaving only Norman Osborne with cold hands and feet standing there. This capital tycoon who dominated the shopping mall felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, feeling cold and desperate in his heart. If Osborne Industries cannot become a procurement company for the Ministry of National Defense, then all the huge funds that have been invested will be in vain, and the huge deficit will be enough to completely break the company's capital chain. As the saying goes, the higher you stand, the harder you fall. For this opportunity, Norman Osborne almost blocked everything. He even borrowed a huge sum of money from the bank. But now General Suo has a clear attitude and is unwilling to pay for it. The next stage of our U00260 process will be paid for, and all the investment will not yield a return. Previous operating costs and research funds will not generate profits. The business empire that has been painstakingly established for decades is suddenly in danger of collapse. Norman Osborne, whose dream was shattered, his eyes suddenly turned fierce. He thought of the 2 company directors who left with the Ministry of National Defense team, and suddenly seemed to understand something. Maybe General Saw never thought of letting Osborne in the first place. Industry has become the procurement enterprise of the Ministry of Defense. This is all a planned conspiracy. No one can take it away from me. Norman's face was ferocious. He could not afford the huge price of losing Osborne Industries. After driving away everyone in the laboratory, Norman left only the scientific research director. After several hours of hesitation and thinking, he made a risky decision. "Mr. Osborne, this is too risky. The human enhancement drug has not yet reached the stage of human testing, and your life will be in danger." The scientific research director pulled Norman Osborne, who had lost his calm demeanor. He understood the other person's urgent mood, but any research results that want to be applied to the human body must go through repeated experiments and data comparisons. "I don't have any more time. If we can't get the order from the Ministry of Defense, Osborne Industries will be completely finished." Norman broke away from the scientific research director and took off his shirt. He was facing the biggest crisis since the company was founded. If he could not survive it successfully, the business empire he had built would be reduced to ruins in an instant. The group of Wall Street bankers will definitely not miss this great opportunity. They will pounce on it like hungry wild dogs. Give me the catalyst. The experiment must succeed. Norman made up his mind. He lay down on the experimental instrument, connected the pipeline for testing physical signs, and was then sent into a closed circular space. Under the operation of the scientific research director, green gas continued to pour in from the holes, and the green gas continued to pour in from the holes. In a moment, it filled the entire circular space, like a thick fog that drowned Norman Osborne's figure. In the empty research room, shrill and painful screams came out. The vital signs curve on the computer became weaker and weaker with Norman's roar, as if it was being gestated in the thick green gas. "With a terrible demon. I want to go to the carnival parade too." In the apartment, Mindy pouted and looked pitiful with tears in her eyes. Today is the Carnival Festival in New York. Many citizens will go out of their homes and gather in Central Park to hold a grand festival parade. Originally, the little girl had been looking forward to this day for a long time, and Sean was also invited by Harry. He originally didn't want to participate in such a lively occasion, but when he thought about being able to witness the first decisive battle between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, he agreed. Master Osborne's request. "I also want to take you with me, but I have an appointment with Teacher John today, and you have to go to school for an interview yourself. This is a major event that determines whether you can go to school." Sean shrugged helplessly. After some discussions with little Lolita, he decided to let Mindy go to school and live a normal girl's life. He called Mindy his cousin. His parents were killed in a car accident and he came from Australia to look for his relatives. His unfortunate life experience and attractive money impressed the dean of the private school. After some operation, successfully made this little blonde Lolita become a member of a noble private school. Of course, the premise is that she must pass interviews with several teachers and prove that she has no intellectual deficiencies. I will bring you Burger King to compensate, or treat you to Chinese food. An authentic Chinese restaurant has finally opened in Chinatown. This is probably the happiest thing in this period of time. Sean comforted Mindy, who was losing his temper. He felt that he was about to enter the stage of a middle-aged man early. He had adopted a little Lolita, but it was like he was raising a daughter and had to worry about everything for her. By the way, remember to try to act like a normal girl and don't scare those teachers. The young boy worriedly warned that because the education method Minty received before was so abnormal, this little Loli's way of thinking was completely different from other peers. He was now very worried when the school teacher asked her what her specialties were. The little Loli will take out a butterfly knife, or perform a grappling fight, which will definitely make the scene extremely embarrassing. Okay, I'm so annoying. The arrogant little Loli put her school bag on her back, swung her ponytail and went out without looking back. She was obviously still resentful of Sean leaving her to attend the carnival parade alone. After putting away the small bottle of oil, Sean put on a suit of suitably pressed formal clothes, called a taxi and drove towards Central Park. Maybe it's time to buy a car, he thought to himself. Central Park is known as New York's Bat Garden, and has always been the preferred leisure place for citizens. As the largest urban park in New York City, it has beautiful scenery, a large lush forest, wide courtyards and an amphitheater. Today, the square in the wide area is already crowded with people. Citizens are constantly pouring in. Colorful ribbons and balloons are flying in the sky. Disney cartoon figures can be seen everywhere, attracting the interest and attention of children. The festival is cheerful. The atmosphere infected everyone. Everyone cheered and played heartily, and the joyous laughter echoed in the sky, forming a noisy and boiling ocean. Harry took his girlfriend Mary Jane to the reserved hotel room early. This luxury hotel with a long history happened to be located near Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Standing on the observation deck with a good view, he could see everything at a glance. With a panoramic view of Central Park, it's the best place to watch the carnival parade. I wonder if Father will come over, and those two guys, Peter and Sean, haven't arrived yet. Harry found that he and his girlfriend were the first two people to arrive, and he couldn't help but feel depressed. Peter had recently encountered a low point in his life. The uncle who raised him was shot and killed. Master Osborne wanted to help his best friend recover from the pain of losing his loved one. Come out. As for Sean, since he entered college, except for attending classes on time, there is basically no one around, as if he is busy with something. However, it is worth mentioning that Sean actually joined the independent research laboratory of Dr. Connors, a visiting professor at the State University of New York, and became an intern assistant. This surprised Harry. He had never heard of Sean before. He has unique talents and interests in genetic biology. As for his best friend Peter, I heard that he is also working hard to become the chief cameraman of the Daily Bugle. All the photos of Spider-Man published by the newspaper were taken by him alone. This added a fortune to Parker, who was originally living a hard life. A lot of income. The two good friends have their own lives. Only Harry doesn't know what to do except live with Mary Jane every day. He doesn't have much interest in inheriting his father's company, hypocritical entertainment in the mall, and the boring industrial production gave Master Osborne a headache. For a moment, Harry, who was holding his girlfriend on his arm, was a little confused about the future and seemed to not know where to go. Harry, isn't your father here? A voice interrupted Harry's thoughts. He turned around and found that it was his father's two partners, Mr. Ba and Mr. Fay. He promised to come, but he hasn't seen anyone else yet. Harry said disappointedly. Maybe his father was busy with some work now, as he always was. We are also planning to inform him of good news. Mr. Ba and Mr. Fay had weird smiles. They had lost their last life-saving straw. Osborne Industries, an order from the Ministry of Defense, would soon be sold to Wall Street bankers at a high price, and huge profits would fall into their own pockets. This is really something worth celebrating. As for that guy Norman Osborne, who cares about a loser? Mr. Libba and Mr. Fay have always wanted to divide Osborne Industries as a big cake, but Norman blocked it with all his strength. Transform the company into a defense procurement company and become a military industrial giant like Stark Industries. It's really ridiculous. Mr. Ba and Mr. Fay looked at each other, turned and walked to the other side, admiring the carnival in Central Park. Noisy waves of cheering swept into the sky. On the huge stage, a black woman in red sang passionately, swaying her bloated body. The high-pitched and enthusiastic rock song was accompanied by a strong rhythm, which instantly aroused the enthusiasm in the crowd. The applause came one after another like waves. A taxi stopped at the edge, and the increasing flow of people blocked the road ahead. Sean got out of the car and looked up to see floating ribbons and hot air balloons, like colorful clouds, almost covering the sky. I wonder if Harry has arrived. Sean looked at the sea of people and felt a little headache for a moment. Not long after, he saw Peter in the crowd. The young Spider-Man was holding a camera and taking photos non-stop, looking like he was never tired of doing it. Sean was about to go up and say hello when a series of sharp laughter flashed across the sky. The singer on the stage couldn't help but stop. The lively and cheerful atmosphere came to an end. People raised their heads and looked up. A man in a dress, the weirdo in green armor, riding a bat-like flying machine, shuttled between the ribbon balloons, laughing maniacally from time to time. Ha ha ha, happy holidays. The weirdo was driving a strange-looking aircraft, and the green eyes on the hideous devil's helmet were full of ferocity. He looked down at the turbulent crowd below, and several pumpkin-shaped bombs were dropped. This is a gift for you. There were several loud bangs, bright fires soaring into the sky, and accompanied by huge explosions. People participating in the carnival parade panicked and ran away. The scene was extremely chaotic for a while. Everyone screamed and ran away. The good stage collapsed under the impact of the crowd. Countless wires were intertwined, and bursts of fire broke out. Sean stared at the strange man in the sky, thinking that just like the original timeline, the Green Goblin made a grand appearance in a carnival style. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions frightened tourists and caused them to run away in panic. Under the violent impact, the masonry walls of the surrounding buildings exploded and collapsed, glass fragments flew everywhere, and steel and concrete fell down from high altitudes like hailstones. The Green Goblin swayed the pumpkin bombs in his hands, and the rumbling air waves rushed out of the building. Violent vibrations and explosions continued to resound. The crowded crowd turned into a turbulent flow, and people screamed in the explosion of fire. Fleeing in all directions, panic spread. The carnival tourists looked up at the laughing green devil in the sky and couldn't help but feel despair. Who will save us? When Sean saw Peter, who was taking photos in the crowd just now, disappear, he couldn't help but smile. The job of saving New York citizens should be left to Spider-Man. He saw the Green Goblin flying to the rooftop of the hotel. In front of Harry and his girlfriend, he used pumpkin bombs to kill the two major shareholders of Osborne Industries. Fortunately, Norman had not completely lost his mind and did not hurt his son. Careful, with the intention of quietly watching the battle, Sean was not prepared to be a good citizen who heroically saved others, but he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. The stage collapsed and pulled the fixed steel frame, and was about to collapse on the opponent's fragile body. With a long sigh, Sean exerted force on his feet and turned into an arrow. He rescued the frightened Karen at an extremely fast speed. With a bang, the steel frame fell heavily, splashing a cloud of smoke and dust. Feeling the delicate body trembling in his arms, Sean could only comfort him softly. It's okay, you are safe. The girl in her arms tightly grasped the savior's hand. When she raised her head, she was surprised to find that she was an acquaintance. Sean. Why are you here? My friend invited me over, but I didn't expect this to happen. Sean explained. Gwen, let me take you out of here first. This girl's name is Gwen Stacy, and she and Sean are college classmates. They work as interns in Dr. Connors's laboratory together, and they are quite familiar friends with each other. It's very dangerous here. Sean looked up and saw that Spider-Man, who had been waiting for a long time, finally appeared. Peter, who made his official debut for the first time, kept shooting spider webs and jumping between high-rise buildings. The Green Goblin seemed to have discovered this annoying guy. He let out a sharp laugh, controlled the aircraft and rushed downwards. He had just strangled 2 living lives. This made the violent desire in his heart even more swollen. There seemed to be the voice kept shouting in his ears, asking him to destroy and destroy even more crazily. Hey, Spider-Man! Several pumpkin bombs were thrown towards Spider-Man, and the turbulent and violent impact air waves knocked Peter out of the air and hit the wall of a building heavily. Do you like the gift I gave you? Ha ha ha, Spider-Man. The Green Goblin activated the miniature machine gun on the aircraft, and a dense storm of metal shot towards Spider-Man, turning the hard wall into a hornet's nest in an instant. Peter continued to shoot out spider silk, with the help of balloons and balloons floating in the sky. The ribbon dodged, and while the Green Goblin was not paying attention, a shot of spider silk popped out and stuck to the bat-flying machine at the opponent's feet, causing it to immediately lose control and throw the Green Goblin out of the air. "Here, try this." Taking advantage of the victory, Spider-Man chased after him, sprayed out spider silk to make a spring, and launched his feet hard, hitting the Green Goblin like a cannonball. He knocked the culprit who ruined the carnival to the ground with 3 punches and 2 kicks. Not to be outdone, the Green Goblin, who rolled to the ground, raised a huge cylinder and knocked Spider-Man out of the air, slamming him into a car. The two men fought inextricably. Spider-Man was nimble and the Green Goblin the Demon has a high-tech equipment, and the combat power between the two sides is almost the same, and it is impossible to tell the winner for a while. Sean brought the frightened Gwen to safety, and suddenly heard a scream. Following the sound, he saw Harry and Mary Jane trapped on the balcony. They kept calling for help, but no one paid attention. Spider-Man originally saw his crush on the goddess in danger and wanted to rush to the rescue. As a result, he was entangled by the Green Goblin and couldn't escape. Because of his distraction, his opponent seized the opportunity and punched and kicked him. In an instant, he fell to the ground. Downwind. The flames of the explosion burst out of the hotel. The balcony that Harry and Mary Jane were standing on was in danger and could break and fall at any time. The two of them huddled in the corner, praying for someone to come and help. "I'm really busier than a superhero," Sean complained silently in his heart. He turned to Gwen and said, "I still have friends there. You stay here and wait for the police to come." Gwen grabbed the men's suit wrapped around her body with both hands and silently watched Sean's leaving figure. Her heart palpitated. The carnival was full of explosions of fire and smoke. The Green Devil and Spider-Man were fighting fiercely. In such a dangerous moment, this young boy still thinks about his friends, which is really admirable and touching. Sean, who was running fast, didn't know that he had been transformed into a brave and fearless hero by Gwen. Whether it was for his own interests or the moral bottom line deep in his heart, he could not sit idly by and watch Harry's life and death. Ignore it, anyway. If you do some good deeds occasionally, just think of it as accumulating character points. While thinking, Sean rushed into the chaotic hotel. The elevator was out of service. He had to run at full speed along the stairs. As Mindy said, he had strong and extraordinary physical fitness, but in just a few short within minutes, he had rushed to the balcony on the top floor of the hotel, but such a huge amount of exercise was no different to him than taking a walk. Harry, Mary Jane. Sean found that the situation of the two people was very dangerous, especially Mary Jane. Half of her body was already hanging in the air, the cement on the balcony was peeling off, the cracks on the wall were expanding, and they might fall at any time. "Come, hold my hand." Sean first pulled Harry over, and then handed his hand to Mary Jane. The red-haired girl was trembling with tears on her face. She was really frightened by the Green Goblin before. She tightly grasped the warm palm that was stretched out and threw herself into Sean's arms. Sean, who successfully rescued the two of them, quietly pushed Mary Jane away and took the two of them down to the hotel, away from the center of the battlefield. They witnessed the Green Goblin killing 2 Osborne Industries employees. The major shareholder was deeply shocked and needs time to calm down. "It's okay, Harry, everything is over." Sean comforted the emotionally unstable Master Osborne. At this time, Harry seemed to remember something, and quickly took out his cell phone and called his father, but no one answered. "I have to go home first. Sean, help me take Mary Jane home." Harry remembered that he invited his father to the carnival, and now that there was such a vicious terrorist attack, he was a little worried. Sean nodded helplessly, turned to look at Gwen and Mary Jane, and said silently, "What the hell? One is the girlfriend of the second-generation Green Goblin, and the other is Spider-Man's first-love girlfriend. Why did you leave them all to me?" Quote, "What a bad day." With deep depression, Sean called a taxi and took the two frightened girls home respectively. The terrorist attack at the carnival shocked the entire United States. The video of the battle between the Green Goblin and Spider-Man was widely circulated on the internet, with more than millions of views. Many people were surprised to find that besides mutants, there were no other people in this world around them. There are other people with superpowers. The White House government also feels extremely troubled. The vicious incident caused by the Green Goblin has a wide-ranging impact and the number of casualties is extremely high. In addition to hotly discussing Spider-Man, public opinion is also strongly condemning the inaction of the National Security Department, believing that this is another terrorist attack after 9/11 and a trampling on the spirit of American freedom. We call on the government to catch the murderer as soon as possible. However, the most frustrating thing may be the mutants who have been hiding in human society. At first, when people saw Spider-Man and the Green Goblin in the video, they thought they were also mutants. Mutants have only just become popular. The registration bill was introduced again, and it was not until a congressman stood up and denied that Spider-Man and the Green Goblin were mutants that the matter came to an end. However, the mutants in Westchester must have felt in their hearts it must be very depressing. Anyway, it's not a good feeling to take the blame. Because of the debut of the Green Goblin and Spider-Man at the carnival, people with superpowers have received widespread attention from all walks of life, and everyone is talking about it. Spider-Man, due to his heroic performance, repelled the ferocious and terrifying Green Goblin and received a lot of attention. In addition to the Daily Bugle, other newspapers are praising this mysterious superhero and calling him New York's good neighbor. Equally unlucky were not only the mutants who were inexplicably scapegoated, but also Osborne Industries. Under the manipulation of thoughtful people, this emerging industrial giant was exposed to the news that its chief scientist was murdered and the products it developed were stolen. At the same time, also a thoughtful note, the equipment owned by the Green Goblin are all from Osborne Industries. This suddenly triggered an upsurge of public condemnation. The stock price of Osborne Industries plummeted. This huge enterprise involved in many fields suddenly fell into a huge crisis and had the momentum of sliding into the abyss. However, at this critical moment, the company was facing a huge crisis. Norman Osborn, who is the chairman, did not stand up to take charge of the overall situation, which made the outside world have a negative view of Osborne Industries. The above is the aftermath of the carnival, but it has nothing to do with Sean, because he is busy dealing with another trouble. You mean, you got into a fight on the first day of school and beat up 2 school bullies to the point where their parents didn't even recognize them? Sean almost collapsed. After only 1 day of school, he received a call from the dean of students, asking him to rush to school to deal with a vicious fight. The two of them were bullying Rachel. The little Lolita, who had been lectured constantly along the way, defended, "The two bad guys were pulling on her skirt, and I only used a little force." Who is Rachel? Sean was a little confused, and then he continued to lecture. "And Mindy, if you want to do it, you can beat them all over their faces, but don't kick them below, that's too cruel. Yeah, especially for boys. Rachel was my first friend in school. She was very pitiful. She was bullied by the school bullies every day, and everyone was unwilling to play with her because she came from Hell's Kitchen." Mindy pursed her lips and seemed a little aggrieved. In her mind, she just did a good thing to help her friends, but she was criticized by everyone. Sean was silent for a moment, touched the little Loli's head, and said softly, "Mindy, you can't continue to live your life the way you did before, helping friends who are bullied by bad people. This is a good thing, but you have to pay attention to the method. You can teach them a lesson with your fists, but don't let the teacher catch the evidence. Because in this case, you are likely to be expelled from the school, and then your friends will continue to be bullied by these people, or even suffer intensified revenge." "You mean, next time I can secretly sap?" Little Loli raised her head and looked at Sean, with a puzzled expression on her face. That's probably what it means." Sean had a headache. It was obvious that he was not suitable for this kind of ideological counseling work. Wanting to turn Mindy, who is deeply influenced by the idea of violence solves all problems, into a normal girl, is really a huge and complicated project, and it needs to be done slowly. "Why are those two people so arrogant in your school?" Sean couldn't help but wonder. That school is a famous private school in New York. Most of the children who attend it come from a good background. Their parents are engaged in decent and high-end jobs. How could they let themselves be allowed to do so? If children are bullied at school, they said their father was a subordinate of Kingpin. Mindy thought for a moment, and then asked doubtfully, "Who is Kingpin?" Sean narrowed his eyes. Is this the rhythm of entering Hell's Kitchen after just settling Frank Deo? Compared to the name Kingpin, New Yorkers are more familiar with Wilson Fisk, a real estate tycoon born in Hell's Kitchen who is passionate about philanthropy and a respectable socialite. However, Sean knows that this is just a layer of hypocrisy. The whitewash shows that in addition to being a successful businessman, the real Wilson Fisk is also the underworld emperor who rules the underworld of New York. He started as a small boss, committed crimes, burned, killed and looted all the way, and finally ascended to the throne of the gang leader. However, this did not satisfy his ambition. Wilson, who had outstanding brains and extraordinary strength, continued to encroach on the territory of other gangs. Anyone who was unwilling to obey him would be eliminated, and finally he firmly controlled the entire American gang. In his hands, he built a huge and terrifying underworld empire based on the chaotic and impoverished Hell's Kitchen. After becoming New York's #1 criminal boss, he packaged himself as a successful real estate businessman, transformed into a social celebrity, chatted and laughed with prosecutors and police chiefs, recruited a large number of Russian mafia and Irish people from Hell's Kitchen as thugs, and then gradually came to dominate the entire New York underworld. Those in the underworld called Wilson Kingpin, which means mastermind. Since then, this name has become a terrifying existence in the underground world. He's just a big bad guy who leads many villains, Sean said calmly, with a thoughtful light flashing in his eyes. Maybe the underworld emperor who rules the New York underground can make some small contributions to his first step in primitive accumulation. After all, Hell's Kitchen is a good place that everyone wants. He held little Loli's hand and prepared to go home. In the end, under the fierce offensive of a lot of dollars, the very principal dean decided to relax the fight on the grounds that Mindy was just a child after all. Rejected other teachers' suggestions for expulsion. Just like this, the storm subsided quietly. Mindy returned to school and became famous in one fell swoop. She became a big sister-like figure in the school and gathered a group of adoring fans under her command. Of course, this is just a small episode in Sean's ordinary life. In this era where superheroes are not yet flying all over the world, he enjoys this peaceful atmosphere. He does not need to worry about alien invasions or evil villains destroying the world. Everything is so beautiful. Moreover, this also allowed him to have a calm mentality of slowly accumulating strength, and he did not have to worry too much about the dangers caused by his weakness. After all, even Tony Stark was still immersed in a decadent life of debauchery and had not become Iron Man flying into the sky and escaping from the earth. The superhero is sleeping in the cradle and has not yet woken up. The overlord of the universe, who covets the 6 Infinity Stones, has not set his sights on this blue planet, and all the stories have not yet begun. There will be bread, there will be milk. Sean looked at the setting sun on the horizon, his eyes shining with longing for the future. Dr. Connors is a visiting professor at the State University of New York. He occasionally teaches students about biological genetics. While serving as a teacher, he also has his own independent laboratory, which was funded by Osborne Industries. The company's boss Norman Osborne was very interested in the research Connors was conducting. It is a technical research on the regeneration of amputated limbs, which has broad prospects and markets in medical applications. That is why Norman Osborne allocates a large amount of research funds to Connors every year in an attempt to complete this epic-making research project. Connors walked out of the office with a frown on his face. He was once a military doctor. He was drafted into the army during the war and sent to the front line to treat the wounded. As a result, he was seriously injured in a big explosion. In order to save his life, he had to be amputated one arm. Later, when he returned to college, he began to study the regeneration system of reptiles and delved into the knowledge of biological genetics, all in order to restore the incompleteness of his body. After years of painstaking research, Connors had already seen a glimmer of light, and many scientific difficulties had been successfully overcome. He firmly believed that as long as he gave himself more time, he could complete the research on the technology of regenerating severed limbs. But at this most critical moment, Osborne Industries cut off its financial support for the laboratory. After Connors inquired about it, he found out that this emerging industrial giant had encountered a lot of trouble recently, and its stock price showed with the avalanche of decline and the constant news that it will be split up and acquired. Norman Osborne, who is too busy to take care of himself, will naturally find it difficult to continue to provide high research funding. This put Connors in an embarrassing situation. He was obviously only one step away from success, but due to insufficient funds, it was difficult to continue the research. This was a heavy blow to him. Thinking that most of his life's efforts and hard work may soon turn into a dream, Connors's pale and thin cheeks flushed with anger. He clenched his fists and looked at the busy interns in the laboratory with a gloomy look. His livid face slowly turned into helpless despair. "Good morning, Dr. Connors." A young boy stood in front of Connors with a warm smile on his face. The dull middle-aged man came to his senses and recognized that this was one of his interns. Connors forced a smile on his stiff face. "Hello, Sean, I read your paper on cross-species inheritance and biological genes, and it's very thoughtful." Connors is very satisfied with this big boy who looks quite sunny. No matter what kind of task is given to Sean, he can always complete it well, even if it is a boring job like cleaning experimental instruments. He is very patient. Therefore, Connors has always admired this young boy. He thought that when his research was successful and he gained the honor and glory he dreamed of, he would formally recruit Sean into the research laboratory and hand over some real core research work. Now everything is empty talk. Without the funding from Osborne Industries, it is completely impossible to continue the unfinished research work. The future prospects that were longed for in the mind have now become the moon in the water and the flowers in the mirror, illusory and fragile. Sean looked at Dr. Connors with a sullen back, and couldn't help but feel strange. Could it be that he triggered the plot of Dr. Lizard? In the original timeline, this taciturn, one-armed middle-aged man, for a series of reasons, used himself to conduct human experiments like the desperate Norman Osborne, and mutated into a giant humanoid lizard. The reason why Sean joined Connor's laboratory was just to find a reasonable excuse for his future achievements. Otherwise, a guy who had no systematic education and no knowledge of science would suddenly come up with scientific research with huge value potential. As a result, it will inevitably attract criticism. Tony Stark's aura of genius is supported by the huge Stark Industries and a degree from MIT. In this case, Sean cannot fall behind. He has been waiting for the right time to get the first springboard. Osborne Industries, whose stock price has plummeted recently, is one of Sean's targets. The high-tech equipment on the Green Goblin is the stolen product of Osborne Industries. This news was sent anonymously to the Daily Bugle by Sean. Norman Osborne took the risk to experiment with human enhancement drugs, but he couldn't control his inner emotions, turned into a violent and murderous Green Goblin. As long as nothing happens, he will die in the hands of Spider-Man sooner or later. At that time, Harry will naturally take over the company that is on the verge of bankruptcy. For everything that happened after that, Sean had already prepared a response plan. If he wanted to transform himself from an ordinary boy in New York to a big shot like Tony Stark, the power brought by the system was far from enough. There are too many powerful people in this world with terrible power. If you just think that you can defeat all superheroes by relying on the system, you will only end up in a difficult situation of being besieged and killed. Sean didn't want to follow the superheroes and shield and accept the assignments and orders from the Black Director, nor did he want to be like Hydra, hiding in a dark and uninhabited corner, planning to confront the Avengers. Rule the world. He wants to carve out his own path between superheroes and evil villains, without the constraints of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the threat of Hydra. In order to achieve this goal, Sean not only needs strong power, but also has a stable enough position, a huge force composed of wealth and power, so he secretly designed Norman Osborn, believing that Mr. Green Goblin was struggling to deal with the crisis the company encountered at this time. If Spider-Man doesn't solve the Green Goblin, then should I take action? Sean nodded his chin in thought. If the timeline changes due to the interference of the butterfly effect, and the Green Goblin is still alive and well, it will be quite detrimental to Sean's plan. Compared with the easy-to-control Harry, the wily Norman Osborn is not easy to handle. Peter, don't let me down. Sean put on the white lab uniform and started a new day. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the blonde girl walking towards him. He suppressed the coldness in his eyes and immediately put on a cheerful smile on his face. He looked like a harmless and sunny boy. "Hi, Gwen, I thought you would stay home and rest for a while." Sean looked at the blinking blonde girl and greeted her with concern. Spider-Man's first girlfriend was holding a bag in both hands, with a slightly shy expression on her pretty face. Sean inexplicably felt that the atmosphere had become subtle, and there seemed to be some kind of ambiguity permeating the air. "These are your clothes. I've washed them for you." "Thank you," the girl said in a voice as loud as a mosquito. If Sean hadn't been a hearing expert, he wouldn't have known what she said. The young boy took the bag and found that it was the suit jacket he had temporarily put on the blonde girl when he rescued her last time. He had completely forgotten about it after that. "Well, I just did what I should do. Anyone in a situation like that would choose to come forward." Sean didn't know that his seemingly humble appearance would win the girl's favor even more. Gwen decided that this young boy was a steady and not vain person, and there was an inexplicable joy in her heart. The two people chatted and laughed with each other and walked into the busy laboratory. At this time, in Connor's private office, the one-armed doctor had a look of struggle on his face, as if he was hesitating to make a risky decision. Undecided. "This is out of necessity, maybe I will succeed." Connors was sitting in his office. As long as he thought that most of his life's hard work was about to be wasted, he couldn't help but feel angry in his heart. Those fools in the mainstream scientific community laughed at him as a mad scientist and carried out a doomed experiment. It was impossible for the research to be fruitful. Norman Osborne, who had always given himself funding, also abandoned himself at the most difficult time. Those who ridicule their physical disabilities, their ugly and distorted faces keep flashing through their minds. The beautiful vision that was originally filled with flowers and honors has been shattered by the cruel reality, and the results of this research have been lost. What else can you do in the future? It seems that there is a voice that keeps echoing deep in his heart, like the devil in Faust, tempting Connors to take the risk and make that bold and risky decision. Maybe the goddess of luck will come to him and conduct human experiments. The probability of success is indeed very slim, but just imagine living in poverty in the second half of your life, ridiculed and questioned by the academic community. "I cannot be reconciled," Connors yelled and swept away the documents on the table with his hand, like a gambler who had lost all his fortune and was determined to make a comeback with the last chance. He looked at the empty sleeve, and a certain impulse surged in his heart, like erupting volcanic lava, completely defeating the defense line of reason. Taking out a reagent from the refrigerated cabinet in the laboratory, Connors returned to his office, locked the door, and began conducting human experiments. He held the defective reagent and understood that this kind of risky attempt that was not rigorous enough was almost suicide, but he had no way out. Osborne Industries would soon withdraw its investment and take back the right to use the laboratory. At that time he will have nothing. God bless. Connors prayed silently, then raised his hand to inject the reagent. Boom, boom, boom. "Dr. Connors, are you in there?" A sudden knock on the door interrupted Connors' human experiment. The one-armed middle-aged man looked a little panicked. He recognized the voice of intern Sean and wondered what that outstanding young man wanted to do with him. "I'm doing some research. What do you want, Sean?" Connors asked nervously. "Oh, that's right. I just talked with Gwen about some research on cross-species inheritance. She said that the research process in the laboratory is stuck on the decay rate algorithm. I have read your published books and all the papers. Can I go in first?" Sean stood at the door. He knew that Dr. Connors had been conducting research on cross-species inheritance throughout his life, trying to transplant the biological characteristics of lizards into humans so that those with physical disabilities could regain their health. Unfortunately, this research project, which would shock the world if it succeeded, has been stuck in the biological equation. Dr. Connors lacks an algorithmic formula for the evolution of the decay rate, making it difficult to make progress in the experiment. The door of the office was opened, and Connors called Sean in. The young boy caught a glimpse of the reagent on the table and was a little surprised. It seemed that his blow to Osborne Industries had made the one-armed doctor also face a life crisis. The predicament has even reached the point where he does not hesitate to use himself for human experiments. "Do you have any suggestions for my experiment?" Connors asked perfunctorily. Although Sean was indeed excellent, he didn't think the young boy had any suggestions. He has been stuck at this stage his whole life. Even after countless attempts, he has never been able to obtain the correct algorithmic formula for the evolution of the decay rate. Sean is only 20 years old, and his experience in cross-species genetic research is limited. For several months, Connors didn't think the other party had any extraordinary ideas. Dr. Connors, I have read your book before, as well as those papers on cross-species inheritance. This is a great idea. If it can be realized, it will have unlimited possibilities. There was a look of admiration and reverence on Sean's face, and he seemed to be confident in Connors' research. The young boy's sincerity touched Connors. He has always lacked recognition. The mainstream academic community thinks that he is whimsical. No one except Norman Osborne is optimistic about this research project, and the president of Osborne Industries it's just for business considerations and investment. Thank you, Sean. Many people think cross-species inheritance is a crazy idea. Connors's eyes showed a trace of gratitude. No one had ever said such a thing to him. Seeing that he was gradually taking the initiative in the conversation, Sean showed a slight smile. This one-armed doctor who has been immersed in academic research all year round is not good at interpersonal relationships and some communication skills, otherwise you must be able to see that the words you just said seemed sincere, but in fact they were just false compliments. Doctor, I have read your test comparison report and the data. This is the algorithm formula for the evolution of the decay rate that I came up with. Do you think there is anything that needs to be corrected? Dr. Connors laughed secretly in his heart. He didn't think Sean could solve this problem at all. He just saw the enthusiasm in the other person's eyes and was unwilling to hurt the young boy's enthusiasm and efforts for science. He took the book with a series of complicated formulas written on it. He was about to reject it, but was speechless. He looked at Sean, who looked calm, in shock. You are incredible. Sean, you are a genius. A genius in the true sense. Connors was excited and incoherent. He did not expect that the problem that had troubled him for many years would be solved so simply. Doctor, this formula is not perfect enough. I hope you can complete it. Sean showed a humble smile. He didn't want Connors to use this algorithm immediately and then turn into a lizard-like monster due to the conflict between biological genes like in the original timeline. But, well, Sean, let me tell you the truth. This research laboratory is sponsored by Osborne Industrial Investment, but this company has encountered some troubles recently. They asked to withdraw their investment and take back the right to use the laboratory. In other words, I don't have that much time. There was a look of pain on Connor's face. Time is his biggest enemy now. Even if success is close at hand, everything takes time to complete. Doctor, have you forgotten the original intention of conducting this research? If cross-species inheritance is realized, it can save tens of millions of disabled people, freeing them from physical defects and the strange eyesight of others, and the development prospects are still endless. Here, the cross-fusion of human genes and animal genes is enough for us to take a huge step on the road of evolution. Sean's tone was passionate and his voice was full of contagion, and he described a broad blueprint for the future for Dr. Connors in an extremely realistic manner. This algorithmic formula is not perfect yet. It is just the product of a flash of inspiration on my part, and it needs to be completed by someone who knows a lot about cross-species inheritance. Dr. Connors, we can do better, we just need to be patient. Quote. The young boy was like a Wall Street stockbroker, constantly following the temptations, which made Dr. Connors' inner thoughts waver. At Osborne Industries, thinking of Norman Osborne who was about to give up on him, Connors fell into trouble again. Research funding won't be a problem, trust me, just give me 2 days. Sean made a promise, his young face was serious and firm, as if he had a magical power that made people believe. Connors looked at the young boy who had brought miracles through his glasses. Although he still had doubts in his heart, he still chose to believe in Sean. Perhaps deep down in his heart, he also hoped to get a perfect match like what the other party described. Experimental results. After leaving Connor's research room, the sky outside had completely darkened. After Sean said goodbye to Gwen, he set off on his way home. Thinking of the girl's reluctant look before leaving, he couldn't help but feel a subtle feeling in his heart. Could this be considered poaching Spider-Man? Throwing away the messy thoughts in his mind, Sean began to think about how to find a huge investment for Dr. Connors. Norman Osborne must not be able to count on it. Mr. Green Goblin was plummeting for the company. The stock price is extremely busy, and given the operating conditions of Osborne Industries, it is indeed impossible to squeeze out more funds. Are you going to find that playboy Tony Stark? This idea flashed away. Sean shook his head and rejected it. Stark Industries is a military industry giant, backed by the Mountain of the Department of Defense. Connor's research results will be used in the field of biomedicine in the future. It is impossible for the future Iron Man to he would like it, and Tony Stark is a venomous, arrogant and annoying character. He is arrogant and narcissistic. It is undoubtedly a fantasy to get investment from the other party in his own capacity. Maybe it will be possible. It would be a huge humiliation. Hammer Industries, also a national arms contractor. No, Justin Hammer is a greedy and brainless businessman. If the status gap is too big, he will definitely swallow up all the dregs. After filtering through all the candidates with suitable conditions in his mind, Sean finally set his sights on the famous New York real estate tycoon, Mr. Wilson Fisk, the underworld emperor known as the Kingpin, in the underground world, who has enough strength, secretly controls 80% of New York's illegal businesses and rules a huge criminal group. Even the judicial system and the FBI can't do anything to him. Compared to other big companies, Mr. Kingpin, who seems to be the least trivial to offend, is actually the easiest person to attack. Those at S.H.I.E.L.D. only care about superheroes with extraordinary abilities. For a man who controls the underground world of New York, the criminal lord will not be interested. Getting rid of a criminal underworld emperor should be regarded as justice for the citizens of New York, right? Sean returned to the apartment and happened to meet Mindy at the door after school. The little loli was wearing a light-colored coat, sky blue jeans, and carrying a school bag. She looked no different from a normal girl. "You must have been thinking of some bad plan just now," Mindy said firmly. "Why do you say that?" Sean was slightly shocked. Could this little guy have the ability to read minds? He actually saw through his inner thoughts. "Every time you think of something bad, you will show that treacherous smile." Mindy threw her school bag on the sofa and quickly took an ice cream from the refrigerator to reward herself. Sean touched his face and thought, is his villain trait so obvious? Even the little loli can see it. "I was just thinking about how to be a good person and a good deed, just like Spider-Man, and be a superhero for a time," Sean defended, in order to restore peace to Hell's Kitchen, and to raise money for Dr. Connor's funds. "Superhero, okay, Mindy suddenly shouted excitedly, "I've already made a name for myself, Super Killer. Isn't it very impressive?" The violence factor in the little loli's bones was activated again. She dug out a black box from under the bed in the room, which was filled with various types of anti-personnel weapons, pistols, micro-submachine guns, tactical daggers, fragmentation grenades, etc. These special forces, the powerful equipment equipped by the police, is enough for Mindy to rush to the New York Police Department and fight her way back and forth. "Ah, you look more like a terrorist." Sean looked speechlessly at the little loli, who quickly changed into a purple wig and a purple tights. He almost forgot that the seemingly innocent and cute loli in front of him was a terrifying figure who once wiped out Frank D'Amico's gang. When it comes to killing experience and skills, Sean can only be inferior. During this time, he has also accepted a series of training tasks assigned by Mindy, learning combat fighting, disguise, as well as hacking knowledge and professional standards. Almost approaching the black-clad agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. How could there be such a cute terrorist? The little loli pouted in a cute way. Sean was speechless. Ever since she entered school and lived a normal girl's life, Mindy has become increasingly difficult to fool. What used to be settled with a pizza now requires at least a strawberry sundae. Plus a hearty Chinese meal. Girls should stop touching these weapons and learn to dance, draw, and play the piano. Finding that he couldn't defeat the little loli with words, Sean had no choice but to use violence. He took the little loli off her wig and confiscated the black box full of weapons and equipment, which he just needed. Mindy pouted and decided to ignore Sean for a week. Who knew this guy was not gentle at all? But when it was dinner time and saw a table of sumptuous and tempting Chinese food, the little loli had no guts to forget about everything. Later, after she tried the legendary Oriental food, she completely forgot about her favorite pizza and Mexican barbecue. Compared with the rich and diverse Chinese food, those foods were simply too childish. Sean looked at the little loli enjoying the meal with joy, and thought to himself that cooking well is indeed an essential skill for every male protagonist. As the night grew darker, Sean urged Mindy to wash her face and brush her teeth. After going to bed, Sean took out a body armor, a pistol, and a tactical dagger from the black box, fully armed himself, and then put on a dark suit. Wearing a colorful hooded sweatshirt, he quietly climbed out the window and went out. When the lights are on, you look down at New York at night. This splendid and prosperous city is like a noisy city that never sleeps. The colorful neon lights and billboards, and the endless traffic flow, merge into a sea of light, which makes people feel can't help but indulge in it. Of course, this is just the charming side of New York. The rich people on the Upper East Side play music and live happily every night, while the people living in the slums can only live in dilapidated apartment buildings that are in disrepair and endure black gangsters, drug dealers and prostitutes, harassment, and sometimes I worry about whether I will be robbed on the road today. If the Upper East Side of Manhattan is a paradise for the rich, then New York's Hell's Kitchen, this area on the west coast of Manhattan Island, commonly known as West Midtown, is an out-and-out hell. It was a famous slum in its early years. A working-class area inhabited by Irish immigrants, is famous for its messy and backward living quality, serious ethnic conflicts and high crime rate. Most gangs in New York have some illegal businesses here, such as arms smuggling, drug trafficking, and human trafficking. These behaviors that are absolutely prohibited in civilized society are not a big deal in Hell's Kitchen, a chaos full of sin. The area consists of lower-class residents, hippies and hoodlums, gang members, prostitutes, etc., forming a huge and complex network. Even if the police are determined to maintain law and order, they have little effect. Sean wore a hood and lowered his head as he walked on the streets of Hell's Kitchen. As the night grew darker, this area known for crime and darkness became increasingly lively. There were scantily clad street ladies, gangsters targeting passers-by's wallets, and domineering gangsters with ferocious faces. He seemed to have stepped into a bizarre world, vaguely touching the darkest corners of New York. James Wesley returned home, loosened his tie, took off his suit, and prepared to rest as usual. "Good evening, Mr. Wesley." A hoarse voice sounded in the living room. Wesley took out a bottle of milk from the refrigerator, his body trembled, and then he regained his composure. "I advise you not to hold a gun or try to resist. Mr. Wesley, you are not good at this." The voice seemed to know what he was going to do. "Sit down at the table and let's talk face to face. This is also the purpose of my visit to you." After thinking briefly, Wesley decided to do as the other party asked. He is a smart man and always knows how to do it. "Preserve yourself. Who are you?" This somewhat gentle young man with gold-rimmed glasses hesitated for a moment before asking this slightly old-fashioned question. "It's not important," the figure sitting in the darkness said, and a pistol with a cold light stretched out from the shadows and pointed it at Wesley, who was trying to stay calm. "Who you are is the question worth caring about." Quote, "Mr. Wesley, at the age of 28, you can buy a duplex apartment in a wealthy area of Manhattan, wear a Piaget limited edition watch on your hand, and wear an Italian handmade tailor-made suit. At the same time, you still own 3 properties in Long Island and 3 in Brooklyn. To be honest, given your age and salary, all this seems a bit unreasonable. You were born in an ordinary working-class family in Hell's Kitchen, and you relied on scholarships and donations from well-wishers to complete your career. After completing your studies, you became the manager of a trading company. With all due respect, based on your salary standards, it would be difficult to buy this house." Hearing his information being revealed bit by bit, Wesley couldn't help but feel a little frightened. The other party investigated him very thoroughly, not even missing the smallest details. Looking at the gun sticking out of the shadows and the figure in the darkness, Wesley began to panic. He didn't know what this guy who appeared out of nowhere wanted to get from him. "It's really surprising. You are a young and promising law graduate studying at Stanford University, and the kind man who funded your studies is none other than the famous real estate tycoon in Hell's Kitchen, Wilson Fisk. But he also has another name that's even more terrifying, Kingpin. Are you here for Mr. Wilson? Who sent you here? The Russian mafia, or the Japanese hand? The Mexican drug cartel?" Wesley's head turned quickly, and he reported several other Hell's Kitchens in succession, of gangster power. "Wow, Jin Bin has quite a few enemies. I told you, you don't need to know my identity. I came to you to discuss a deal." A figure poked out from the darkness, his face obscured by under the hood, his appearance cannot be seen clearly. Wesley leaned forward slightly, adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses with his hand, and said, "You want me to betray Mr. Wilson?" This top law student who graduated from a prestigious school has a quick and flexible mind. He knows that he has nothing to attract the attention of others. Only the underworld emperor who rules the underground world of New York will become the target of others. Bingo. The figure in the darkness snapped his fingers and said in a relaxed tone, "It's not betrayal. No one dares to ignore Kingpin's illustrious reputation. Most of the people who opposed him were sunk to the bottom of the Hudson River. Go, Mr. Wesley, who is Kingpin's personal assistant, should understand this better than me." "Then what do you want? I'm just a nobody." Wesley was confused by the other person's words. The figure under the hood chuckled twice and placed the pistol in the middle of the table, as if he was not afraid of Wesley taking away the weapon. "I'm interested in Kingpin's industry. Of course I mean the legal industry on the surface. Hell's Kitchen is a mixed place. Kingpin established his powerful rule through violent and bloody means, but the Russian mafia and the Japanese the hand, these forces have always wanted to take back their territory, and soon there will be a war here." The figure under the hood looked at the frowning Wesley and said, "I want to kick all these people out, including Kingpin." Wesley had a look of astonishment on his face. He almost thought he had met a madman. How could he eliminate Kingpin and all the gangsters in Hell's Kitchen? Even the entire New York Police Department couldn't do it. Kingpin alone had thousands of thugs and villains working for him. If the Underworld Emperor said that he wanted someone to disappear in New York, that night the man's body would be dumped into the bottom of the Hudson River. "You must think I'm joking now, and maybe you'll still think of me as a lunatic who talks nonsense." The figure seemed to have guessed Wesley's thoughts, and then said, "I don't need your belief, or even your actions. Give any guarantee. I came to see you today and have this conversation just to let you know one thing, Mr. Wesley." The figure paused, then said, "Tomorrow night, Kingpin will die, and so will his right-hand man, Bullseye." This sentence was like a bolt from the blue, hitting Wesley directly. His brain seemed to be on hold, and even his ability to think was stagnant for a moment. Is this madman going to kill Kingpin and Bullseye? When these two men are dead, you, James Wesley, as Kingpin's personal assistant and in charge of his criminal empire, will become one of the most powerful men in Hell's Kitchen. The figure under the hood ignored Wesley's shock and explained his plan. "The person with the same status as you is Mr. Leland, the financial expert next to Kingpin. If he is willing to cooperate, then, you will take over the industries under Kingpin's name as soon as possible. As for those businesses involving illegality, I believe the Russian mafia, the Japanese hand, and the group of Mexican drug traffickers will be interested. What you have to do is to use the shortest possible time to cleanse yourself, package yourself as a legitimate businessman, a young upstart from Hell's Kitchen, and then invest in a doctor of genetic biology named Kurt Connors to provide him with research funds." Quote. Wesley's mouth opened wide. He looked at the figure in the darkness in a daze, thinking that he had really met a complete lunatic, who was talking unabashedly in front of him about how he wanted to usurp the New York Underworld Emperor. Property and territory, isn't he afraid of telling Jin Bin himself? "You are a smart man, and I appreciate that you did not try to take the pistol away from the table. Otherwise, you should go see God at this time," the other party said calmly, but there was a hint of coldness in his tone, which made Wesley tremble. "Of course, you can also tell Kingpin that there will be a madman who will try to kill him tomorrow and take everything from him." That figure always guessed Wesley's thoughts, as if he could read his thoughts, which made Wesley feel like he was completely seen through by the other party, without any secrets. Quote. However, a smart and capable person will never be willing to be inferior to others. You should not just be a personal assistant to a gang boss. Mr. Wesley, you can have a broader future, if you are really smart enough. The figure slowly retreated into the darkness. After a while, silence returned to the room, and there was no sound anymore, as if everything that had just happened was just Wesley's hallucination. The Underworld Emperor's personal assistant looked at the pistol on the table with complicated emotions in his eyes. In the deep night, Sean quietly climbed through the window and returned to the apartment. He took off the hooded sweatshirt used to hide his appearance, removed the body armor and tactical dagger, and lay on the bed thinking about it. He visited James tonight. Wesley, Kingpin's personal assistant, is also one of the Underworld Emperor's most trusted confidants. He deliberately created an image with mysterious origins and unconventional tricks, just to make Wesley confused about his origins and create a feeling of uncertainty. Generally, smart people will think more than ordinary people. More. This is exactly what Sean wants. he wants to use this sense of mystery to eliminate the intimidation and awe brought by the kingpin. Sean has no interest in becoming the underworld emperor of New York. He just wants to use Kingpin's wealth to take the first step in his grand goal of ruling Hell's Kitchen. That is something that will be considered later. If you want a smart person to betray his boss, you must first arouse the desire deep in the other person's heart. Ambition is an instinct that everyone is born with, but most people whitewash it into seemingly glorious ideals or firm beliefs. Wesley is a capable and smart man. Generally, such people are rarely satisfied with what they have because they feel that they deserve more and deserve higher status, more wealth, and more power. Human desires are endless, like a bottomless abyss that is difficult to fill. A guy who appeared out of nowhere and said some crazy words that didn't know what he was capable of could make Wesley suddenly betray his boss, the notorious underworld emperor. No matter how powerful the protagonist's halo is, it is impossible to reach this level. All Sean has to do is plant a seed of ambition in Wesley's heart. If Kingpin really falls, who should hand over the huge family property left by the underworld emperor? Sean has never believed that there is absolute loyalty between people in this world. As long as the price is enough, anyone is likely to betray you, provided that you can afford the chips. Kingpin disguised himself as a philanthropist and socialite, often sponsoring young people from Hell's Kitchen to help them complete their studies. Those who were favored often joined the company under Kingpin's name and became the largest criminal group in New York, one of them. That was the case with Wesley, but he was the most successful one. A young law student who graduated from a prestigious school, he suddenly became the legal advisor to the gang leader, and finally became Kingpin's personal assistant, managing everything for him. With all the businesses in Hell's Kitchen, I have to say that this kind of life is quite legendary. Perhaps in Kingpin's view, he has given Wesley enough, but the other party may not think so. Who doesn't want to climb up and sit in a higher position? That lawyer who likes to go out at night has to thank me. After all, I will soon solve a big problem for him. Sean put his hands behind his head and stared at the ceiling blankly. Sometimes when he looks in the mirror, he feels strange. Since he came to this world, he has gained power beyond ordinary people's understanding. He has gradually become stronger bit by bit, and can kill gangsters who threaten him without changing his expression. In order to achieve his goal, he can appropriately adopt some shameful means, such as spreading information about Osborne Industries and the Green Goblin, or using Dr. Connors to perfect the algorithmic formula for the evolution of the decay rate. Sean couldn't tell whether this change was good or bad. In short, if he chose this path, he must go on without hesitation. Any stumbling block that stood in the way of progress would be ruthlessly crushed by him, or he would be crushed. Kick your feet away. Gradually, the young boy's eyes became firm again. This is not a world where normal people or good people can survive. When those villains destroy the world, and when those aliens attack, no one will because your moral level is higher than yours. Ordinary people, I will give you a break. The world is not beautiful after all, it is dangerous and cruel. Sean muttered to himself, and then fell asleep. The next day, when night falls, a huge, muscular figure stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. He had a shiny, round bald head, and was dressed in an elegant custom-made suit. He always had a sincere smile on his face. He did not have any terrifying aura on his body, which made it difficult for people to see him. It is conceivable that this fat, bald man who looks quite amiable will turn out to be the most talked about kingpin in the underworld world. Bullseye, you know, my father is an annoying drunkard. He gets drunk every day and takes it out on me and my mother when he comes home. Once, I was bullied by a bully in school. When my father found out, he took me. I found that guy. He grabbed the person who bullied me and told me to beat him hard, saying, only if the fist is hard enough, others will be afraid of you and not dare to bully you. So I beat the bully very badly. When the blood splashed on my face, I realized that violence is as fascinating as fine wine. This is the only thing that drunken lady taught me. Jin Bin rubbed the buttons on his cuffs. The smile on his face faded little by little, and the murderous aura of the underworld emperor suddenly emanated. Money and power can make people bow your head and surrender, offer your dignity, but only your fists can make others fear you from the bottom of their hearts. So, when I grew up, I joined a gang and was determined to be the one with the toughest fists. Boss, you rule the entire underground world of New York. No one is afraid of your majesty and power. Even the unscrupulous Irish and the Russian mafia have obediently handed over their territory. A tough man wearing a black trench coat and tight leather pants flattered. He was called Bullseye, and was one of Kingpin's few confidants. He served as a thug and bodyguard. He had a gun target pattern painted on his forehead. There was a ferocious, evil look in his eyes. Many gang leaders who did not obey Kingpin's rule died at the hands of this guy. Bullseye was once a notorious professional killer, and was later hired by Kingpin to become his chief assassin. He had a natural throwing ability and could use any object in his hand as thrown at the target with incredible accuracy. Playing cards, toothpicks, darts, these can become terrifying murder weapons in his hands. "Why didn't you kill Daredevil last time?" Jin Chong asked Bullseye. He knew that his subordinate rarely made mistakes. "A guy with a skull pattern on his clothes rescued him," Bullseye said harshly. "The Punisher. Hell's Kitchen is just getting more and more interesting. Daredevil is a street hero who has emerged recently. He wears a strange costume similar to the Red Devil and fights criminals everywhere. Last month, he messed up several of Kingpin's businesses. He didn't take the financial losses seriously. Here, it's just that the Underworld Emperor can't tolerate anyone who dares to provoke him. As for the Punisher, he is a more brutal guy than Daredevil. All criminals caught by him will hardly survive. The other party is good at using various firearms and should be a mercenary or a retired special soldier who has received strict training. The New York Police Department has regarded him as the most dangerous person and is fully seeking him." Bullseye, try to find out the identity of Daredevil. I want to play with him slowly. A cruel smile appeared on Kingpin's lips. He hadn't met such an interesting character in a long time. Kingpin saw many people who thought they were righteous. These people thought they were the protagonists in comic books and could save the world. In the end, they all knelt at their feet, crying and begging for mercy, completely abandoning the beliefs they once insisted on. Money can make people bend, power can make people bow down, and violence can make those with money and power full of fear. Kingpin looked at Hell's Kitchen with satisfaction. This once chaotic place of slums was now at his feet. Those casinos, nightclubs, hotels, were all his property, those gangsters, and drug dealers. They all fell at their feet. He was the secret ruler behind this city, and he was on an equal footing with the big shots. While the Underworld Emperor was immersed in his career, a tiny firelight flickered outside the floor-to-ceiling window, then continued to magnify, rushing towards the luxurious apartment where he was staying. "Boss, be careful." Bullseye noticed something was wrong immediately and quickly sounded a warning. Kingpin's eyes widened, his muscles tensed up, and despite his huge body weighing an astonishing 450 pounds, he did not move at all slowly. He jumped aside nimbly, and then the bulletproof floor-to-ceiling window shattered, glass fragments flew into the sky, and exploded. The air waves swept in all directions, tearing apart the precious carpets, the oil paintings hanging on the walls, the dazzling array of high-end wine cabinets. Everything in the room was torn to pieces, and the hot firelight was like a bloody mouth, licking the leather, sofa and wooden floor. A surprisingly powerful rocket kicked off the attack. "Sean, you have to be careful, those two guys may not be dead." On the top floor of the building opposite, a cute little loli wearing a purple wig and tights was speaking to the communicator. She was almost knocked to the ground by the huge recoil of the rocket launcher just now, and her shoulders were still sore. "I knew I shouldn't have let you come." A headache-inducing voice came from the communicator. Sean was originally planning to break into Kingpin's high-end apartment alone and deal with the Underworld Emperor who secretly ruled the New York underworld. But who knew that Minty discovered his plan, and little Lolita, who was always interested in violence, clamored to join the action. After Sean thought about it carefully, he finally agreed to her request, except that he really couldn't stand little Lolita. In addition to Lee's cuteness and chattering, Mindy's own good fighting ability is also a big reason. After all, this little loli is not as weak as she looks on the outside. Underneath her cute and innocent disguise, she is a super killer who has been cruelly trained to become a murderous weapon. Plan A failed, implement the second plan. Sean issued an order from the communicator. He sneaked into the high-end apartment floor where Kingpin lived early. "Mindy, when will Kingpin's men arrive?" "I cut off the power supply to the elevator. You have about 10 minutes. The little loli was still very reliable at critical moments. "That's enough. interfere with the surveillance equipment in the building and let me give Mr. Kingpin an unexpected surprise," Sean said calmly. He had been carefully planning for tonight's assassination operation for a long time. The luxuriously decorated apartment room was now in a mess, with broken glass scattered on the floor, thick smoke filling the air, and streaks of flames licking the bookcases and carpets. The embarrassed Underworld Emperor got up from under the desk. The shocking impact of the rocket explosion did not seem to cause much damage to him. "It's an experience I haven't had in a long time." Jin Bin licked the corner of his mouth, with a hint of cruel bloodlust on his seemingly honest face. The sturdy Underworld Emperor took off his tattered white suit, and his shiny bald head was covered with dust. Since he became the ruler of Hell's Kitchen, no one has dared to carry out such an assassination on him. Not only it was because he was afraid of Jin Bin's crazy revenge and terrifying reputation, and after his hostile forces lost countless capable people, he realized that it was almost impossible to get rid of the Underworld Emperor. In addition to the bodyguard Bullseye who always guards Kingpin, the Underworld Emperor himself is also extremely powerful. Before he rose to become the ruler of the New York underworld, there were rumors that he once beat a hostile gang leader alive. Horrible rumors about Bolognese. "Bullseye, are you dead?" Kingpin held the cane tightly. He did not think that his capable man would be killed easily. There was a slight noise in the fireplace in the apartment room, and a muscular man wearing a black trench coat and tight leather pants crawled out. There were scorched stains on his face, and he looked even more embarrassed than his boss. "Boss, someone has sent us a big gift." Bullseye gritted his teeth. This bloody and cruel killer was filled with the desire to kill. "I'm afraid one rocket is not enough. There should be a group of gunmen, maybe a group of mercenaries from the Central Asian battlefield." Kingpin wrote lightly. As the ruler of the New York underground world, he did not know how many storms he had experienced. A small attack could not scare him. In fact, the Underworld Emperor has some expectations in his heart. When he throws those corpses into the Hudson River tomorrow morning, the whole of New York will once again feel the blood and terror contained in the name Kingpin, and the enemies who planned this attack would also end their lives in painful cries. Just a game to kill boring time, Kingpin thought. Dong dong dong. The door of the room that was well preserved in the huge explosion was knocked, and a rather young-sounding voice came from outside the door. "Mr. Wilson Fisk, please sign for your express delivery." Kingpin and his subordinate Bullseye looked at each other, and the muscles in his body tensed instantly. Sure enough, the next second, the heavy door was kicked open with a bang, and a black shadow with a cold chill rushed into the room. Without too much nonsense, Bullseye immediately threw two sharp darts. The cold light flashed, cutting through the air at extremely fast speeds, pointing at the intruder's throat and eyes, while Jin Bin on the other side holding the heavy cane in his palm. The extremely strong and huge body rushed towards the black figure who came to visit in an unfriendly way, as if carrying rolling thunder. The black shadow was not blocked by the sharp darts fired from him. He stepped lightly, like a faint afterimage flashing past Bullseye's attack. A majestic wind and thunder struck down, which came from Jin Bin. With the heavy cane attached to his body, there is no doubt that if he were hit by this blow, the head of the attacker who rashly broke into the Underworld Emperor's residence would explode like a watermelon in an instant, rendering it an extremely bloody and terrifying scene. Sean, who had only stepped into the room for less than 10 seconds, encountered a series of fierce attacks. First of all, he had to admit that Kingpin did have extraordinary strength. No wonder even Daredevil, Punisher, Spider-Man, etc. None of the superheroes have benefited from each other. In terms of the power displayed by this Underworld Emperor, he is no longer inferior to those powerful street heroes. Sean's pupils contracted, and the power that had been accumulated in his body for a long time surged out like a river. Those invisible tiny molecules surged in every cell, like a scorching fire, stimulating every fiber of the body, nerve. An incomparable sense of power lingered between his hands. Sean's eyes suddenly turned cold. He exerted force on his feet and moved his body in an incredible trajectory. The heavy cane seemed to be made of steel, smashing the bookcase behind the wall. All of a sudden, the room looked like a ruin, with scraps of paper flying all over the sky. A very fast flying knife locked onto Sean's path and shot into his chest. At the same time, Kingpin also cooperated with tacit understanding and swung his cane to slash at him. That one seemed to be worth a lot of money. A jet black cane shoots out a blazing white current. This is the secret weapon prepared by the Underworld Emperor for himself. It is like a high-tech equipment from a science fiction movie. It has various attack capabilities and can emit lasers, poison, and smoke. It can also emit electric shocks when used as an electric baton in close combat, which is enough to make the opponent unable to guard against it. Bullseye and Kingpin smiled at each other. They already had an amazing tacit understanding of cooperation. The two of them had never failed together, whether they were mercenaries from the South African rainforest or ninja assassins trained by the Japanese hand. Under the eyes of the flying knife and Jin Bin's iron fist, everything turned into a cold corpse. This is why the Underworld Emperor did not choose to escape at the first moment of being attacked. The two of them are the most terrifying thugs and villains in Hell's Kitchen, so how can they be afraid of those extremely weak killers? Die! Kingpin roared wildly, and the huge sound wave shook the wall. His strong and huge body was like a mountain, squeezing over quickly, and Bullseye's cold gaze like a poisonous snake was locked on Sean, and he was affected by it. There was no trace of panic in the eyes of the young boy who was being attacked from both sides. It was as if the flying knife that was about to pierce his chest, the cane that was striking fiercely, and the blazing white current that shot out were all non-existent. Facing the double attack of Kingpin and Bullseye, Sean's muscles tensed up, and his transformed and tyrannical body surged with inhuman strength. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. He strode forward suddenly, without a trace of movement, not afraid of the heavy cane striking violently, or the sizzling white light. The whole person was like a sharp arrow that left the string, and suddenly hit the Mafia Emperor's strong body like a mountain. Click! A clear sound of shattering resounded in the broken and messy room. The furious Jin Bin opened his eyes wide with an incredible look of shock. His extremely strong and huge body flew into the air, like a mammoth that had been knocked away. With a sound there was a loud bang and he fell heavily to the floor. The white electric current emitted from the cane hit Sean like a long whip, making a crackling sound, but it did not cause him to twitch all over and fall to the ground paralyzed. The tiny electric current is absorbed by the sponge-like water flow, and is swallowed up by the hungry cells in Sean's body. The tyrannical body transformed by the mysterious potion can even absorb and utilize the energy of the star's light, not to mention that it is only a threat to ordinary people. High voltage current. Do you only know how to use these gadgets? Sean turned to look at Bullseye, holding the shining knife in his hand. Bullseye, one of Kingpin's closest men, was speechless for a moment. He stared blankly at the Underworld Emperor lying on the ground, not knowing whether he was alive or dead. A chill suddenly came out of his heart, as if the shadow of death shrouded him, of the head. Your boss is not dead yet, but he will be soon. Sean smiled slightly. Are you going to accompany him, Mr. Bullseye? Before Bullseye could open his mouth to answer, a quick cold light flashed across the air. The cruel killer, whose hands were stained with unknown amounts of blood, stared blankly. An indescribable cold feeling hit his heart, and he slowly fell down. A sharp throwing knife is stuck on the gun target pattern on his forehead. After solving Bullseye, the cold-blooded killer, Sean strolled to Kingpin's side and looked down at the ruler of New York's underground world. The Underworld Emperor's chest had collapsed, as if he had been hit head-on by a train, and his sternum was completely shattered. His mouth and nose spewed out a large amount of blood involuntarily, and his breathing became rapid and weak. It can be predicted that this terrifying boss who made the New York underworld fearful will reach the end of his life soon. Mr. Wilson Fisk, please sign for this one-way ticket from hell. Sean looked at the struggling Underworld Emperor with a cold look in his eyes. Kingpin tried his best to reach out and grab Sean's trousers, his eyes full of reluctance. He never thought that he and Bullseye would suffer defeat at the hands of a young boy. Those vicious villains, thugs who kill without blinking an eye, have all knelt down at their feet, humbly offering their loyalty and dignity. From a small gang leader in Hell's Kitchen, he finally climbed up to the throne of the gang boss by relying on his courage to fight and his ruthlessness, and finally became the ruler of the New York underworld. During this period, he experienced many life and death crises. The Irish entrenched in Hell's Kitchen, the ferocious and powerful Russians, and the powerful Japanese hand, all of these people fell on their way forward. Kingpin relied on the illegal business in Hell's Kitchen to accumulate a large amount of money and capital, and established a powerful underworld group. Then he packaged himself as a successful real estate businessman, entered the upper class, and even chatted and laughed with the mayor and police chief. On an equal footing, who would have thought that this fat bald man with a sincere and enthusiastic appearance would turn out to be a gangster with a terrifying reputation? But all this has now become a dream. Feeling the passage of his life bit by bit, the Underworld Emperor's vision gradually blurred and his eyes lost focus. This young boy was like a terrible demon that suddenly broke out and ended him with one hand. Of all your dreams and grand undertakings. Ho ho. Seeing what Kingpin wanted to say, Sean looked calm. It was no longer difficult for him to end a living life with his own hands. This world is not beautiful, just like a hell full of chaos and sin. The kitchen is just as cold and cruel. We don't know each other, and you haven't offended me, but I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson Fisk, I have to stand at a higher position. In order to achieve this goal, someone always has to be sacrificed. Sean kicked away casually. The Underworld Emperor pinched the hem of his trousers and said, "It's just like you need to kick away the stumbling blocks in front of you in order to become a gangster from a young gangster. Thinking about it, you never care about those things you put in a sack and thrown into the Hades." The innocent souls of Zune. Jin Bin's aura became weaker and weaker. He listened to the young boy's words and felt relieved. He had always regarded himself as a hunter, but he never expected that one day he would become prey in the eyes of others. At the last moment of his life, the memories buried deep in his heart became vivid. His grumpy father beat his mother in the kitchen. At a young age, he tremblingly raised the hammer in his hand, and a large amount of blood came into view, and the demon in his heart awakened from then on. He dropped out of school and joined a gang, began to sell marijuana pills in the streets, and participated in gang fights. He personally killed a small boss who was against him, and then successfully became a gang boss. The memory pictures flashed before my eyes one by one like a slideshow, and finally stopped at the back of a slim and beautiful woman. That was a woman named Vanessa, who ran a well-known gallery. Elegant and generous, Jin Bin, who had always been indifferent to feelings, had a rare feeling of being moved. It's a pity. Kingpin's eyes showed nostalgia for this world, and he breathed his last breath with difficulty. The boundless darkness swallowed everything, and the Underworld Emperor of Hell's Kitchen, the ruler of the New York underworld, died. The biting night wind blew in through the cracked floor-to-ceiling windows. Sean looked out the window at the bustling night scene with a faint smile on his lips. "You still have 3 minutes to leave." Little Loli's voice came from the communicator. Sean glanced at the cold body lying on the ground, and then made a phone call. In the wealthy area of Hell's Kitchen, in a duplex apartment. James Wesley was a little restless, holding the phone in his hand, with complicated emotions surging in his eyes. As Kingpin's trusted personal assistant, he had extraordinary status and power in Hell's Kitchen. The rational and calm Wesley knew that everyone's respect and fear for him originated from the terrifying Underworld Emperor, who was only the executor and spokesperson of Kingpin's personal will. "Should I tell Mr. Fisk?" Wesley turned around on his phone. How should he explain it to the boss? That a madman broke into his home last night and made wild promises about killing the Underworld Emperor of Hell's Kitchen. Sighing softly, Wesley put down the phone. He didn't know what he was expecting in his heart. Is it worth believing what a madman said? Mr. Fisk has used his terrifying reputation over the years to prove his unshakable and solid position in Hell's Kitchen. Even the last time the Japanese hand dispatched many elite ninjas, they ended up losing troops and returning without success. How could that guy with an unknown origin dare to say that he could kill the Underworld Emperor and his powerful bodyguard Bullseye? Wesley laughed to himself. Was he really blinded by ambition? To actually believe the ravings of a madman? Buzz. The cell phone placed on the table suddenly vibrated. Wesley subconsciously picked it up quickly and found that it was an unfamiliar number. He hesitated to answer the call and heard a familiar voice from the other side. "Hello, Mr. Wesley, you should still remember me. After all, we had a friendly conversation last night." Wesley felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and his heart was filled with turmoil. His body was trembling slightly, and deep down in his heart he seemed to be vaguely expecting to hear some news. It was an expectation and desire that he would never dare to think about at ordinary times. "Tomorrow, you will become the new Emperor of Hell's Kitchen. Are you ready, Mr. Wesley?" The voice spoke easily, as if stating something trivial. "I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."